Chapter 3100. All right. Don't keep thinking about those two female disciples. The older man frowned and shouted, "Don't forget that this is a training ground, not a place for romance." That disciple couldn't help but smile embarrassedly and didn't dare to say anything else. "Listen, let's do this." They gathered together to discuss how to deal with Mu Ling and the rest. At this moment, Mu Ling and the rest were resting and didn't know that they were plotting against them. After midnight, it was the time when sleep was at its deepest. However, at this moment, in the night wind, a faint scent drifted over. When that faint scent drifted over to them, Fengjiu opened her eyes. She, who was familiar with elixirs and all kinds of medicine, could smell it with one sniff. She was originally leaning against a tree to rest, and the people beside her were Mu Ling and Pei Zixuan. She gently knocked twice, and the two of them woke up immediately. Before they could speak, Fengjiu lowered her voice and said, "Don't move, someone is watching." Hearing this, the two of them knew that it was the people from the Qingqing Immortal sect. Just as they were asking, Mu Jiu handed over an item and said, "Put this under your tongue." Thus, they took the item and put it under their tongues. Then, they quietly woke the others up and distributed the items to the others so that they could hold them under their tongues. They felt a spicy sensation from the tip of their tongues to their noses and directly to their brains, causing their drowsy minds to suddenly wake up. After a few minutes, rustling sounds came from not far away, as well as the voices of those people talking. "The medicine should have taken effect, come out. Hurry up and take everything from them," the older man said as he led the other disciples out. However, when all of them walked forward without any warning, Mu Ling and Pei Zixuan, who were originally motionless with their eyes closed, suddenly leaped up and grabbed the man in the lead with one move. Hiss! Caught off guard, his hands were twisted behind his back. He stared at them in shock and exclaimed, "How are you all fine?" The others also quickly jumped up and surrounded them. "Humph. It's good that we didn't attack you, but you actually dared to plot against us. Attack! Let them have a taste of our power." For a moment, both sides were embroiled in a chaotic battle. The leader of the group was knocked unconscious by Mu Ling and joined the others in the battle. The fighting power of the people on their side was not low to begin with. In addition, the people of Qingqing were not prepared. They were caught off guard and lost their composure. Just as the outcome of the battle was about to be decided, the people from the Qingqing Immortal School threw something on the ground. There was a loud bang and a light smoke spread out. Those people took the opportunity to escape. Mu Ling and the rest coughed incessantly from the thick smoke. They waved their hands to disperse the smoke as they retreated. By the time the smoke dissipated, those people had already fled without a trace. Only the man they had knocked out was left. "Ran away. You actually left him behind." Guiziki sneered and glanced at the abandoned man. He felt that he was a little pitiful. At the critical moment, his companions, his senior and junior brothers, his team members, had abandoned him just like that. Chapter 3101. "Keep the items and send him out of the mystic realm," Pei Zixuan said. Thus, they took the items from the unconscious man and distributed them. Then, they crushed his teleportation jade token and sent him out of the mystic realm. Luckily, Mu Jiu knows medicine. Otherwise, we would have fallen into their trap this time, a few disciples with the surname Qin said and looked at Mu Jiu. If it wasn't for him, they would have died long ago. The few of them were in charge of keeping watch, but they weren't too far away from them. They just sat down against a tree not far from them. If it wasn't for Mu Jiu's reminder and the medicine under their tongues, they would have been the ones robbed and sent out of the mystic realm. "Master told us to protect you, but we didn't expect you to be the one protecting us the whole way," Mu Ling said with a smile and looked at the sleepy youth who was yawning. "We're all helping each other," Fengjiu said with a tired face. "It's still early until daybreak. I'll sleep for a while more." She walked to a big tree beside the fire and sat down. She leaned against it and closed her eyes to rest. Seeing this, everyone smiled and knew that those people wouldn't dare to come again. They left 2 people to take turns keeping watch while the rest continued to rest. The panting and shocked disciples ran to a secluded place and stopped. They said in exasperation, "How can they be fine? The medicine was clearly enough to knock them out, but it was all faked." Someone sat on the ground and asked, "What do you think will happen to Senior Brotherly if he falls into their hands?" "What else can happen? He'll definitely be robbed of everything on him. They'll probably crush his teleportation jade token," a man said. As his voice fell, his expression changed slightly. "I think there must be someone among the Cerulean Planet disciples who is skilled in medicine. Otherwise, they wouldn't have known that we tampered with it. Although most of us in Qingqing are skilled in medicine, we're not weak either. But compared to them, we're still hard to beat. Are all the Cerulean Planet disciples so powerful?" One of the disciples hesitated and said, "I think I recognize 2 of them." Hearing this, the others immediately looked at him. "Which 2 people?" "The 2 in the lead, the first 2 who jumped up. One of them is called Mu Ling, and the other is called Pei Zixuan. Both of them are sons of aristocratic families. It's said that they're the next heirs of their families. Their statuses are extraordinary. Moreover, their masters are Mu Axian and Si Quebec. Among the venerables of the Cerulean Planet Immortal sect, they're the strongest." The disciple paused for a moment before he continued, "Some time ago, during the competition between the 4 major immortal sects, Venerable CK and Venerable Mu Axian lost to Fengjiu. They even became his disciples. You should remember." Hearing him mention this matter, everyone suddenly understood. Of course they remembered. At that time, Fengjiu and Xianyuan Mose came down from the immortal ascension stairs in front of the disciples of the 4 major immortal sects. As soon as they came down, they disrupted the competition of the 4 major immortal sects. In the end, the 2 strongest venerables of the Cerulean Planet Immortal sect became their disciples. Everyone in the 4 major immortal sects knew about this. They were also present at the scene. How could they not remember this? The strength of their disciples is naturally extraordinary. We were lucky to be able to escape from their clutches. The disciple said. Chapter 3102. Hearing this, although everyone did not say anything, they felt that it was true. They had used a secret move. If they were seen again, they would definitely not let them off. Thinking of this, they could not help but look around. This place was pitch black, and those people did not chase after them. Only then did they relax. Let's rest. Tomorrow, we'll leave this place and try not to meet them. Thus, everyone rested on the spot, planning to leave this place as soon as the sun rose to avoid meeting them. A few days later, at noon, Fengjiu and the others were dealing with the ferocious beasts that they had just killed. After a few days of interaction, they already had a tacit understanding. Anything that had medicinal value from the ferocious beasts would belong to her, and those that were valuable or had other uses would be distributed by the others. Over the past few days, as they gradually entered the depths of the dense forest, the levels of the ferocious beasts they encountered became higher and higher, and their combat strength gradually increased. Even this time, they had killed more than a dozen ferocious beasts, and a few of them had suffered varying degrees of injuries. After Fengjiu collected the medicinal items, he looked at the few people who were resting at the side and asked, "How are your injuries?" "It's not a problem, it's already bandaged," Su Kaiji said. Because he had been poisoned a few days ago, his body was gradually recovering, and his strength could not keep up, so he was injured. However, it was only a small injury, and he would be fine after applying some medicine. "The smell of blood here is stronger. If you want to rest, we have to change places," she said. Because she happened to be the leader today, she had the responsibility to take care of the entire team. As for taking turns to be the leader, it was a good way to let everyone learn the ability and responsibility of leading a team. Besides that, it was also a test of personal ability. Alright, then let's pack up these things and go to the front to rest, Lin Qingjin said as he hurried to deal with the remaining matters. At this moment, Fengzhou seemed to have sensed something. He turned around and looked in a certain direction, saying, "Someone's coming." In the past few days, other than a group of disciples from the same immortal sect, they had only encountered some ferocious beasts. They had not met anyone from the other immortal sects, and at this moment, the group that was coming over seemed to be the disciples of the other immortal sects. Oh. It's actually the disciples of the Blue Star Immortal Sect. There were quite a number of people in the group. As they approached, they sized them up. Their gazes swept past their prey and landed on them. Are you going to hand it over yourselves? Or do we have to do it ourselves? Tell us, if we attack, you won't be able to keep your things, and you'll have to leave the mystic realm. As the man in the lead spoke, his eyes flashed. When they fell on Fengzhou, his eyes lit up. He strode forward and came to Fengzhou's side. There's actually such a young disciple? She looks very delicate and pretty. As he spoke, he stared at Fengzhou with a strange light in his eyes. He even reached out to touch Fengzhou's face. What are you doing? Mu Ling and the others shouted in unison, and a sharp aura shot out. Ha ha ha, didn't you see? Our eldest senior brother has always had a soft spot for handsome youths. Although your looks are not bad, it's just that you're a little too old. Those people laughed heartily. When Mu Ling and the others shouted, they rushed forward in a flash and stopped them. Chapter 3103. Her lips curled into a faint smile. No one saw how she attacked, but they heard a blood-curdling scream. The man standing in front of her bent his knees and fell to his knees. She twisted one of his arms behind his back and the crisp sound of his bones breaking traveled into everyone's ears. Ah! The blood-curdling scream woke everyone up. They looked at the man whose arms had been twisted by the youth and cried out in alarm, "Eldest senior brother." Just as they were about to step forward, they heard the youth's voice. "Don't move. Otherwise, I don't know if I'll break his neck." She clasped one of her hands around the man's neck, causing him to involuntarily shudder. Don't come over." He cried out in alarm and looked at Fengzhou in shock. The disciples of the four major immortal sects are not allowed to kill each other. Don't do anything rash. Fengzhou smiled. I'm not doing anything rash. I'm just protecting myself. Furthermore, I didn't attack first. If anything happens to you, it'll be purely an accident. Mu Ling and the others took advantage of the fact that the others were still in a daze and quickly came to Fengzhou's side. They looked at the 20 disciples and said in a low voice, "If you don't want anything to happen to him, leave immediately." Some of the people looked at Mu Ling and the others, then looked at the man whose arm had been twisted. Their eyes flashed and someone stepped forward fiercely. They're just a dozen people, yet they dared to hurt eldest senior brother. How can we let them off? We have to avenge eldest senior brother. When he heard this, the man who had been pressed to the ground by Fengzhou changed his expression. If they rushed forward, then he don't do anything rash. Listen to them. Listen to them first, he said hurriedly. However, when he saw that the disciples were about to attack, his heart sank. Were they giving up on him? Were they trying to take the opportunity to kill him? Fengzhou looked at this scene and chuckled. Looks like you're not very popular. As she spoke, she took everything off the man's body. At the same time, she crushed his jade tablet. I'll spare your life for now. As soon as she finished speaking, the jade tablet shattered and the man was teleported out. When the disciples saw this, their expressions changed. It would be fine if he died here, but if he made it out alive, then take care of them. One of the men shouted fiercely. He raised his chi and rushed forward with his sword, attacking Fingzhou. Mu Ling and Pei Zishuan stood in front of Fingzhou, facing the people who were attacking them. They had fewer people on their side, but their strength was not weak. Both sides exchanged blows, both looked like they were going all out. When Mu Ling and Pei Zishuan saw that many of their people were injured and their battle prowess had decreased, they couldn't help but feel anxious. However, at this moment, the roar of a ferocious beast could be heard. Roar! Roar! A powerful pressure accompanied the howl and filled the air. Feeling the vibrations in the air, Fingzhou frowned slightly. This pressure, it was most likely not from an ordinary beast. At that moment, she decisively shouted, "Mu Ling Kaiji, take your men and retreat from the southeast. Qing Jin and Zi Xian, stay behind and cover for me." Hearing this, everyone followed her orders instinctively. Mu Ling and Yun Kaiji took their men and retreated. Fingzhou, Lin Qingjin, and Pei Zishuan were in charge of covering the rear. Chapter 3104. Whoosh! Ah! The roaring flames instantly attacked those people. When a wall of fire was built in front of the three of them, it also bought them time to retreat. At the same time, the sharp sword in Fengzhou's hand flashed and a sharp sword chi shot out, blocking the cultivators who were chasing after Mu Ling and the others. The distance between the two sides was widened. The moment the sword aura and flames shot out, the disciples exclaimed in shock and instinctively retreated to avoid the sword aura and flames. They watched as those people retreated tens of meters away from them, widening the distance between them and the rest. Just as they were about to give chase, the roar of a ferocious beast suddenly sounded. Roar! Roar! The powerful roar was accompanied by a terrifying aura, causing them to have a splitting headache. They hugged their heads and cried out in pain, "Oh no! There are high-level ferocious beasts. There's a retreat. Follow them and retreat to the southeast." Someone shouted. He wanted to retreat in the direction that Mu Ling and the others had retreated in to fight for a chance of survival. However, in the blink of an eye, two ferocious leopards exuding a powerful aura appeared and blocked their path. Hiss! Godly beasts! Seeing the level of the two leopards, they couldn't help but gasp and their faces turned pale. Two godly beasts, and two leopards with abilities higher than level 5. Even if there were more than 20 of them, they wouldn't be a match for them. However, if they were to crush the jade pendant and leave the mystic realm, they wouldn't be satisfied. Immediately, they gritted their teeth and shouted, "Let's join forces. If we win, we might even be able to tame the two godly beasts and help us greatly." Hearing this, everyone's hearts stirred. They couldn't help but admit that the temptation of two god beasts was too great. If they could subdue them and form a contract with them, their strength would greatly increase. Moreover, if they could obtain a god beast as a contract beast, the immortal sect would raise them and their family would rise to another level. This temptation was far too great, enough to move their hearts. "Foolish humans, do you think you can tame us? What a fool's dream." One of the leopards stared at them with bloodthirsty eyes. It stuck out its tongue and licked the corner of its mouth. Then, it opened its mouth and revealed its sharp teeth. "Looks like I'll be able to eat my fill today." As soon as the leopard's voice fell, it let out a low roar and pounced forward at a speed too fast to be heard. One of the disciples who couldn't dodge in time fell to the ground. The leopard opened its mouth and bit the neck of the disciple who cried out in alarm. "Ah! Save!" Crack! Before he could call for help, he heard the sound of bones breaking. The disciple's body stiffened. His body twitched a few times before he stopped moving. Even in death, his eyes were still looking in front of him in horror. The leopard raised its head and revealed its sharp teeth that were stained with blood. It let out a low roar at the pale-faced disciples. The disciples came back to their senses and turned to run. However, the leopard was faster than them. It pounced forward and knocked down another disciple. Before the other disciple could attack, its sharp claws pierced into the disciple's heart. With a swipe of its claws, the leopard dug out the disciple's inner core and swallowed it. Chapter 3105. Run. Run. Their mental endurance had reached its peak, causing their bodies to tremble and unable to fight. Some people crushed their teleportation jade tablets as they ran in order to exchange for a chance of survival. Some people were too slow and couldn't react in time. They were pounced on by the two ferocious leopards and had their necks bitten off. The smell of blood filled the air, making the already bloody place even redder. The few corpses on the ground were covered in blood. Every one of them died with their eyes wide open in fear. Their faces were filled with horror. Other than a few people who couldn't escape in time, the others used their teleportation jade tablets to escape. The two ferocious leopards glanced at the corpses on the ground, then looked around. The humans who escaped earlier seemed to be smarter. They escaped in the opposite direction before the leopards even got close. Now, they couldn't even see their shadows. What a pity. Then, the two ferocious leopards ate the corpses on the ground clean. Finally, they squatted on the ground, wiped the corners of their mouths with their claws, swung their tails, and lay down to rest. Fengjiu and the others quickly escaped from that area. Gretchen and Lin Yusher were panting as they ran. They looked at Fengjiu and asked, It seems like they aren't chasing us. Can we stop? After fighting, running, and getting injured, their stamina wasn't as good as a man's. They couldn't keep up. Fengjiu looked back and said, Let's stop and rest for a while. Mujo, what kind of beast was that? We only heard the sound. We didn't even see it. Gwaziki asked as he wiped his sweat. But from the sound of it, it seems to be a very powerful beast. The pressure in its voice is extraordinary. Zheng Hai said, gasping for breath. Fengjiu thought for a while and said, It's a divine beast that isn't inferior to the iron-hide scarlet dragon. And there are two of them. If those people go up against those two divine beasts, they'll probably lose a layer of skin even if they don't die. Actually, she felt that it would be difficult for them to not die. Unless they crushed their jade tablets and escaped before the two divine beasts came out, they might have a chance to live. However, this was a once-a-year experience in the mystic realm. They probably wouldn't give up this opportunity unless they had no other choice. Hearing this, everyone's faces froze. There was a trace of fear in their hearts. Two divine beasts that weren't inferior to the iron-hide scarlet dragon. If they went up against them, it would be really dangerous. They might even die here. Fengjiu took out some wine from her space and took a sip. She thought to herself, why are there so many mythological beasts here? Logically speaking, even if it was a mystic realm, this kind of mythical beast should be in the deepest part of the mystic realm. However, even though they were in the deepest part of the mystic realm, they were still very far from the deepest part. However, including the iron-hide scarlet dragon from before and the two mythical beasts today, they had already met 3 mythical beasts. This situation did not seem right. Did your master mention anything special about this place to you? Fengjiu asked. Hearing this, everyone's eyes flashed. Chapter 3106. The ferocious beasts they encountered along the way were considered to be above average. Next were the divine beasts. In just a few days, they actually encountered 3 divine beasts in a row. There was indeed something wrong. Normally speaking, those divine beasts should stay in the depths. It was impossible for them to appear here. Then, what was the reason? The situation seems to be a bit wrong. I haven't heard of encountering divine beasts here in the past. Lin Chengjin said and looked at them. Did something happen in this secret realm? Otherwise, why would all the divine beasts come out? Hearing this, Su Kaiji asked, if that's the case, doesn't that mean that in addition to the divine beasts we encountered before, we might encounter other divine beasts? If that was the case, then it would be really troublesome. It's a pity that we can't contact people outside the secret realm. Otherwise, we could ask what happened inside. Gwaziki sighed softly. He couldn't help but worry about these 3 months of experience. Since we don't know what happened, we can only be careful. Fengzhou looked at them and said, "Take the time to rest and adjust your breath. Get ready to go." "Okay." Everyone responded and sat down cross-legged to rest. On the other side, outside the teleportation array, seeing another unconscious disciple being teleported out, the 2 venerables guarding outside the array slightly froze. In the past few days, many disciples had been crushed by the teleportation jade token and sent out of the secret realm. Those disciples who were sent out had varying degrees of injuries on their bodies. Moreover, their interspatial rings and Qinquan bags were missing. This disciple is at the peak of the nascent soul realm. His strength is not weak. How could he be injured like this? A mentor said as he surrounded the disciple who had fallen at the teleportation array. Another venerable from the immortal sect walked over and said with a smile, "His skills must be inferior. Otherwise, why would he be seriously injured and sent out after stealing his things and ruining his opportunity to experience this time?" As soon as his voice fell, the 2 venerables at the teleportation array in front of them turned around and looked at him strangely. He said with a displeased expression, "Why are you looking at me? Am I wrong?" "No, this disciple is from your immortal sect. Do you want to come and see which supremacy of your sect is his disciple?" A supremacy of the Blue Star immortal sect smiled and asked the supremacy to come forward. The Exalted Realm expert was stunned when he heard this, and then he strode forward. However, his expression couldn't help but change when he saw the person lying on the ground. How could this be? He quickly stepped forward and helped the disciple up. After examining the disciple, his face darkened as he pressed his finger on the disciple's Renjong point. The disciple groaned in pain and slowly opened his eyes. "Master! Master!" The eyebrows of the 2 venerables twitched. So this unlucky disciple was his disciple. No wonder his face was so dark. "What's wrong with you? How did it end up like this? Who did it?" the venerable asked with a dark expression. "It's the people from the Blue Star Immortal Sect. They tricked their disciples." The man gritted his teeth and glared at the Blue Star Immortal Sect's venerable. Chapter 3107. When the venerable master heard this, he remained silent. He helped the disciple up. Just as he was about to speak, he saw a flash of light in the teleportation array. One by one, the disciples appeared in the teleportation array. "It's you guys." When the disciple with the broken arm saw them, his eyes darkened. "Eldest senior brother. Master." When the disciples saw them, they gradually regained their senses and suppressed the fear in their hearts. Too terrifying, too terrifying. They died just like that, and died so miserably. What happened? Why did you come out? There were divine beasts inside. Very high-level divine beasts. We escaped. A disciple said with a trembling voice. When he thought of the scene inside, his eyes were still filled with fear. Divine beasts. Did you enter the depths? The venerable masters were startled and asked. No, we didn't enter the depths. But 2 divine beasts appeared out of nowhere. They were extremely fast. They pounced and bit several senior brothers to death. The disciple's heart was still beating rapidly. He felt a lingering fear. If they couldn't escape, they would have died in there. When he thought of being eaten by the 2 divine beasts, he couldn't help but tremble. Divine beasts usually don't appear easily. How did you encounter them inside? What exactly is going on? Tell us in detail. The venerable master said in a low voice. They felt that the situation was a little strange. At this moment, two venerable masters walked over and said, "You guys can stay here. Something seems to have happened in the secret realm. The sect masters want you guys to go back immediately." "What happened?" the venerable masters asked at the same time. The East, West, South, and North teleportation arrays have sent disciples out one after another. They all said that they were attacked by divine beasts. Now, the disciples of the four sects have died in there. The situation is a little serious. Hearing this, their faces changed. They immediately followed the two venerable masters and left. In a place not far from the teleportation array, the sect masters of the four immortal sects had rushed over after receiving the news. The four of them stood not far from the teleportation array, surrounded by some supremacies of their immortal sections. After everyone had arrived, one of the sect masters waved his hand and set up a soundproof barrier. He then said to them, "The restrictions in the secret territory have loosened, especially the restriction in the depths of the secret territory. The restriction next to it has been broken. The divine beasts that used to live in the depths of the secret territory have all rushed out and scattered to various parts of the secret territory, even the periphery." The sect master's voice paused for a moment as he looked at the crowd and said, "Based on the information of some of the disciples who managed to escape, we know that many disciples of the four sects have been killed. There are still more than 2 months before the 3-month deadline. I'm worried that the disciples inside won't be able to withstand the attacks of the mythological beasts. When the 3-month deadline is up, only a few of them will be able to come out alive." Everyone went silent for a moment when they heard this. Those people that were going in to temper themselves were the seed disciples of their respective sects, and they were the disciples that the various clans thought highly of. If a mishap were to really occur in there, then this matter wouldn't be a small matter. Finally, the other sect leaders looked at each other and asked, "What do you think? What should we do? The 3-month deadline isn't up yet. If they didn't crush the jade tablet to teleport themselves out, we wouldn't be able to get them out." Chapter 3108. There's a problem in the mystic realm. The disciples inside probably haven't noticed the loosening of the restrictions. Even if they do, they won't be willing to crush the teleportation jade tablet before they encounter any fatal danger. We can't contact them from the outside either. The only way is for the supremacies to go in and inform the disciples of the four sects so that they can come out as soon as possible. Hearing this, everyone was startled and asked, "But this mystic realm can only allow nascent soul cultivators to enter at most. Those above the nascent soul stage will definitely be suppressed and it'll be difficult for them to move around inside." "No, have you forgotten? It's because of the loosening of the restrictions in the mystic realm that caused all these problems." The sect leader of the Blue Star Immortal sect looked at everyone and said, "The loosening of the restrictions means that the supremacies have a chance to enter. Because of the loosening of the restrictions, your strength won't be suppressed after entering. That's why I said that this is the only way. But the restrictions haven't completely loosened yet. We can't enter either," one of the supremacies said. "That's why we have to work together to open the restrictions. Now that the restrictions have loosened, the ferocious beasts inside will definitely become restless. However, it's one thing if a powerful cultivator enters. But if they enter with the strength of a nascent soul cultivator and encounter a powerful ferocious beast, only death awaits them." Hearing this, everyone was silent for a moment and said, "All right, as long as the restrictions are opened, the supremacies of the four sects are willing to enter and bring the disciples out." Seeing this, the sect leaders of the four immortal sects looked at each other. They removed the soundproof barrier around them and walked towards the array, at the same time, in the mystic realm. Fingzhou, who was resting under a tree with her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes. A trace of surprise flashed across her clear eyes. She looked at the air in the mystic realm and felt that something seemed to be changing. The strength that was originally suppressed in her body was slightly surging. It was as if a person who had originally contracted their hands and feet was slowly extending their contracted hands and feet. The suppression was gradually disappearing. What's wrong? Mu Ling had been paying attention to Mu Jiu. When he saw him suddenly open his eyes, he stared at him and asked. Feng Jiu stopped thinking and looked at them and asked, "Do you feel anything different?" "What's different?" Everyone was stunned when they heard this. "The restrictions are disappearing," Feng Jiu said. She stood up and felt that the restrictions were indeed disappearing. The restrictions that were originally suppressing her strength was disappearing, and her strength was gradually surging out of her body. "It seems like something big." She spoke softly as she walked around the area. Her pace was neither fast nor slow, as if she was thinking about something. After a long while, she turned around and looked at them. "I suggest that you all leave this place first and stop this training." "Is it because there are divine beasts?" Feng Nine glanced at them and said, "Because the danger inside has increased by more than one level. It's very difficult for a nascent soul realm cultivator to survive here. Especially since the restriction has disappeared, the powerful divine beasts will no longer be trapped in the depths. Instead, they will walk around in this secret realm to hunt for food. If you're not careful, you'll die without a complete corpse." Chapter 3109. The situation may not be as serious as you say. Furthermore, we are not the only ones here. There are other disciples as well. I think we should take a look first. Disciple Chin said. We are all immortal cultivators. We can't possibly retreat just because there is danger, right? Furthermore, we don't have to leave just yet. Guiziki said, unwilling to leave just like that. Hearing their words, Feng Jiu frowned slightly. Then, she looked at Mu Ling and Pei Zishuan and asked, "What do you guys think?" These two were her seniors and their words carried some weight. She hoped that they could see the danger clearly and leave now. When the two heard this, they looked at each other and said, "We also feel that we don't have to leave yet. Even if there is danger, it won't be too late to leave then." Seeing this, Feng Jiu did not say anything more and said, "Since you guys have said so, then do as you wish. Mu Jiu, don't worry. If there is really danger, we will crush the jade pendant and leave." Guiziki said. "Yes. We will be fine as long as we are careful." Shanghai said. "Then let's go." She looked at the crowd and packed up before continuing to walk forward. She said, "Let's take a detour to avoid meeting the two beasts. Don't make too much noise to avoid unnecessary trouble." The crowd agreed and went around the two beasts. Along the way, Feng Jiu asked Lin Qingjin if there were any special landmarks to remember where the 1,000-year-old black dragon tendons were. Along the way, they did not meet any fatal danger. At this moment, not far in front of them, dense trees blocked their view. However, they could hear faint cries for help. "Help, help." Hearing the cries for help, Mu Ling and the rest stopped in their tracks. "Someone is calling for help." With that, they quickly walked forward and pushed aside the trees to take a look. He saw a woman in green tied to a tree in front of him. Her clothes were slightly messy, and her hair hung loosely. Half of her face was covered, but he could still see that she was a woman with extraordinary looks. "It's a disciple of the Qingqing immortal sect." They went forward and untied the woman while asking, "Why are you tied up here?" The woman's long hair hung down to her waist, and her green clothes were loose and messy. Her skin was like jade, and there were tears in her eyes. She had a panicked expression on her face, and she looked exactly like a delicate beauty, causing all the men present to feel pity for her. After the woman was untied, she still looked delicate. She lowered her eyes and sobbed, "I don't know. I was tied up when I woke up. I don't even know where my senior martial brother went. I'm scared. I'm scared alone." As she spoke, she sobbed and threw herself into Mu Ling's arms. Her helpless expression made Mu Ling look awkwardly at the others. Everyone was looking at him as if they were watching a show, especially Mu Zhou, who had a half-smile on his face. Mu Ling couldn't help but cough lightly and push the girl away. "Miss, please conduct yourself with dignity," he said in a clear voice. After pushing the woman away, he said, "Miss, you can crush the jade pendant and leave the mystic realm first. Now that the mystic realm has changed, it's not very safe." Chapter 31:10. Hearing this, Mu Ling frowned slightly. No teleportation jade token? That would be troublesome. He looked at Guan Yu and Lin Yushi and said to them, "Help her tidy up." "All right." The two of them replied and brought the girl to the side. Seeing them leave, he then looked at Mu Zhou, Pei Zixuan and Lin Qingjin and asked, "What do you think? How should we deal with this girl?" Pei Zixuan and Lin Qingjin looked at each other and said, "This woman is a little suspicious. She said that her senior brothers have all disappeared, but there are no signs of battle in the surroundings, nor is there any aura after the battle. There are also no corpses or anything like that. She is alone here. I feel that something is wrong." Feng Zhou looked at the two of them with admiration in his eyes. Hearing this, Mu Ling nodded. "It is indeed a little strange, but we can't just leave this girl like this, right?" As he spoke, he looked at the silent Mu Zhou and asked, "Mu Zhou, what do you think?" Feng Zhou smiled and said, "There is no aura of a human on this girl. Didn't you notice it?" She glanced at the girl who was tidying up her clothes and hair. She was a delicate girl and was very lovable. However, from the first glance, she could tell that she was not human. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. How is that possible? They instinctively looked at the woman. The woman seemed to have sensed their gazes and looked back at them, revealing a gentle and beautiful smile. "Mu Zhou, could you have seen wrongly? That is clearly a girl." Disciple Chen said and felt that it was not possible. "It can't be wrong," Feng Zhou said and looked at Mu Ling, Pei Zixuan and Lin Qingjin. "Deal with it as you see fit. Deal with it. Deal with it. Kill her. That is clearly a girl." Disciple Chen frowned and looked at the indifferent Mu Zhou. He said, "There are so many of us, but we can't tell that the girl is not human." "How did you know?" "That girl does not pose any threat to us. If we kill her like this, it may not be too much." "I don't agree with your method. It is too hasty." Feng Zhou smiled. "It's fine. You guys can make the decision." Since he didn't believe her, there was nothing she could do. She just hoped that he wouldn't come looking for her when something happened. Mu Ling, Pei Zixuan, and Lin Qingjin glanced at each other. The three of them were more opinionated than the rest. When they heard Mu Zhou say that the woman wasn't human, their first reaction was to believe him. Because of what they had seen and guessed along the way, they felt that Mu Zhou was not an ordinary disciple. Moreover, he had saved them many times along the way. It was impossible for him to harm them, and it was even more impossible for him to harm an unfamiliar girl. However, from their point of view, they were unable to detect that the woman did not have any human aura like Mu Zhou. On the contrary, what they saw was a woman. This was undeniable. Before the other party posed a threat to them, they couldn't bring themselves to kill the woman. After some consideration, they said, "How about this? Since we've already saved her, let her leave on her own. Just don't let her follow us." Chapter 31:11. What do you think? Feng Zhou looked at him and asked. The man with the surname Chen paused and said, "Why don't we bring her along first? Maybe we'll meet the disciples of the Qingqing Immortal Sect and hand her over to them." I think that's a good idea too." Shanghai agreed. The other disciples with the surname Chen also nodded in agreement. Seeing this, Feng Zhou chuckled. "Since you've said so, then we'll do as you say." On the other side, Gretchen and Lin Yusher helped to tidy up the girl's clothes and hair. Seeing that they were done talking, they brought her over. Let's continue walking. Let's find a place to rest before it gets dark, Fengjiu said as he looked at the crowd and walked forward. When the people behind him saw this, they also followed behind. Seeing Mujio walking in front, Guiziki leaned close to Muling and asked softly, "Is Mujio angry?" "No, he's not that petty." Muling shook his head and said. Lin Qingjin looked at Mujio in front of him and then glanced at the woman beside Gretchen Yu and his sister. He thought to himself, if this woman is really not human like Mujio said, then what is she? If she's not human, then she's definitely dangerous. It's too dangerous to let his sister and Junior follow her. Immediately, he called out, "Yusher, Junior sister, the two of you come over." The two people who were talking to the girl were startled when they heard this. They said something to the girl and walked forward. "Brother, what's wrong?" Lin Yusher asked as she came to his side and held his hand. Gretchen also looked at him from the side but did not speak. "The two of you, don't get too close to that girl." He lowered his voice and said to the two of them. "Why?" The two of them asked in confusion. "Just listen to me and don't get too close. You have to be careful," he said in a low voice and glanced at the two of them. He did not look like he was joking at all. Seeing this, the two of them were startled. After looking at each other, they nodded. "Okay, we understand." Although they did not know the reason, the two of them knew that he would not harm them. Therefore, for the rest of the journey, the two of them distanced themselves from the girl and distanced themselves from her. Along the way, Mu Ling, Pei Zixuan and Lin Qingjin kept their eyes on the girl behind them. After seeing Yusher and Gretchen distancing themselves from her, not long after, she started chatting with the disciples of the Qin surnamed Qin and seemed to be very happy. Seeing this scene, their hearts trembled slightly. Mujio reminded them to be careful of this woman, but from the looks of it, they did not seem to take Mujio's words to heart. Fengjiu glanced at it and shook her head. "No, this cave should be the lair of a huge beast. If we rest here, we may become the meal of some beast." Chapter 31:12. The few of them glanced at Mujio, then said to Guiziki, "Today, our team leader is Mujio, let's do as he says." It was one thing to bring that girl along, but if they did not give him face again, they were worried that they would really anger him. Hearing that, Guiziki smiled embarrassedly. "All right, we will listen to Mujio." Saying so, he said, "Mujio, I don't have any other meaning, don't mind me." He did not mean to look down on him, only thinking that if they stayed in this cave, they would be able to sleep more comfortably at night. Along the way, Mujio had saved them many times, and he saw it all. Naturally, he would not say that he was dissatisfied with him. Furthermore, he was someone that their master had instructed them to take good care of, even though it seemed that he had taken care of them more. "Let's walk a little further in front to take a look," Pei Zixuan said, pointing to a place in front. "That place has a mountain, and can block the night wind at night. It's not bad as a resting spot." Thus, the group continued to walk forward and came to the place that Pei Zixuan had mentioned. Fengjiu looked around and said to them, "Then let's rest here. Mu Ling, come with me to take a look at the surrounding terrain. Zixuan, I will leave this place to you." "All right," they responded. Mu Ling followed Fengjiu to take a look at the surrounding terrain. Pei Zixuan assigned tasks to the group, letting them pick up some branches nearby to prepare for the fire at night. Mu Ling followed Mujio, and after the two had walked for a distance, Mu Ling hesitated, as if he had something to say, but he did not say it after moving his lips a few times. Fengjiu naturally sensed it and said, "You have something to ask me?" "Yes." Mu Ling responded, looking at him and said, "But I don't know how to start." Hearing this, Fengjiu laughed lightly. "Since you don't know, then don't speak." Mu Ling paused, but still asked, "You are not from the Mu family, right?" No. As Fengzhou spoke, he gave the answer very straightforwardly. This caused Mu Ling, who originally thought that he would not answer, to be stunned for a moment. Only then did he continue to ask, also not master's disciple. Fengzhou glanced at him with a smile on his face and said in a light tone, "No. You came here just for the 1,000-year black spirit tendons?" He asked again. "That's right." Fengzhou nodded. Who are you?" He asked the last question and looked at him nervously. "Master told me not to ask about you, but I'm still curious. I want to know who you are." Hearing this, Fengzhou chuckled and said, "I'm your ancestor." Hearing this, Mu Ling's face instantly darkened. He thought that Mu Jiu was joking with him, and had even made such a rude and impudent joke. Just as he was about to reprimand him, a thought suddenly flashed through his mind. His heart jumped and his eyes widened in shock. You are not Mu Jiu, you are Fengzhou." He sucked in a breath and exclaimed in shock, looking in disbelief at the person in front of him. "Your reaction is quite fast." Chapter 31:13. Hearing this, Mu Ling's legs turned to jelly and he almost knelt down. Wasn't this his ancestor? Even their Mu family's ancestor had to be respectful to his master. When the immortal sect introduced him, he even called him senior brother. Thinking of this, his face turned pale and he knelt down. However, before his knees touched the ground, someone grabbed him by the collar and pulled him up. "What are you doing?" Fengzhou glanced at him unhappily and said, "Other than my 2 disciples, no one knows my identity. Don't reveal my identity and bring me unnecessary trouble." Mu Ling suppressed the shock in his heart. He was so nervous that he could barely move his hands. He took a deep breath and looked at Fengzhou, who was standing at the side. He quickly said, "Don't worry, ancestor. I won't say anything. Just call me Mu Jiu. Let's go. Just familiarize yourself with the surrounding terrain." Familiarizing himself with the terrain was just to know which direction to escape to if there was any danger. "Yes." Mu Ling respectfully responded and did not dare to be impudent in his words. Although he felt that he was unfathomable, he did not know that he was her. He also did not know that he was their master's master, their Mu family's ancestor. Now that he knew, his attitude would definitely be different. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. He paused and asked, "Ancestor, the girl you mentioned, is she really not human?" Fengzhou turned back and glanced at him. "Do you think I'm joking?" Hearing this, Mu Ling's expression turned serious. "If that's the case, then we can't keep this girl. We have to go back and chase her away to prevent trouble." Fengzhou walked forward and said leisurely, "I told you long ago, but you didn't listen. If anything happens, it's your problem." As they walked back, the sky gradually darkened. When they returned to the resting place, Fengzhou glanced around and saw that the girl and the disciple surnamed Qin were not there. He frowned and asked, "Where's the girl?" She and junior brother Qin went to pick up branches nearby. As Pei Zixuan spoke, he looked around. "Strange, he's been gone for a while, why hasn't he returned yet?" "Oh no!" Mu Ling exclaimed in a low voice. "Quick! Bring him back." Seeing his grave expression, the crowd did not ask any questions. Instead, they quickly searched the surroundings. "Senior brother Qin. Senior brother Qin." The other 2 disciples surnamed Qin came back with a push of branches. Seeing that they were looking for someone, they asked, "What's wrong? Where's your clan brother?" Mu Ling asked. "Have you seen him?" "He went over there with the girl just now, we didn't notice," the 2 disciples said. Seeing the serious expressions on their faces, they asked, "Did something happen? Why did they all look like that?" "He might be in danger. We have to find him as soon as possible." As Mu Ling spoke, he led the crowd in the direction that the 2 disciples had pointed. At this moment, in the cave abode that they had discovered when they arrived, the disciple surnamed Shin was hugging the girl. The girl's clothes were half undone, revealing her snow-white shoulders. The disciple surnamed Shin had one hand around the girl's waist and the other around her back, pressing her against him while he buried his head in the girl's chest. Chapter 31:14. Those slender white fingers gradually turned into withered twigs and sharp claws grew out from the tips of those fingers. Her hand slowly caressed downwards and stopped when it reached his heart. Senior brother Chin, she coquettishly called out softly, and the blurry enjoyment in her eyes suddenly changed and became bloodthirsty and excited. In the next moment, her sharp claws pierced towards the body of the disciple surnamed Shin. However, at this moment, the disciple surnamed Shin, who was lying in front of the woman's chest with a look of enjoyment, was suddenly hit in the back of his knee. His legs went soft and he knelt down as his body slid downwards. Junior brother Chin. Senior brother. As the disciple surnamed Shin slid down, the woman's sharp claws pierced empty air. She was annoyed and was about to grab the person who had slid down to his knees when she felt a murderous aura coming towards her. Pei Zishuan wielded his sword and charged forward. The frontal attack caused the woman to quickly retreat, and at the same time, it gave the disciple surnamed Shin time to react. Senior brother. The other disciples surnamed Shin quickly went forward to help him up and retreated to the side. Senior brother, are you all right? Fengjiu's lips curled up and he glanced at him and said unhurriedly, I'm intoxicated in the land of tenderness. How could anything happen to me? When the disciple surnamed Shin heard this, he couldn't help but lower his head in shame. I'm fine. He was just frightened and didn't expect such a thing to happen. That was clearly a woman. When he looked up, he couldn't help but be stunned. Just a moment ago, she was still a charming beauty, and in the next moment, that beauty had turned into a monster. Her face also changed and a sinister and seductive aura overflowed. Her body was like an old tree and her hands and feet gradually turned into tree roots. She is 1,000-year tree demon. Fengjiu narrowed his eyes and crossed his arms in front of his chest as he watched from the side. He didn't expect that the moment the restriction disappeared, a monster would take form. Moreover, it was a 1,000-year-old tree demon. If he didn't see wrongly just now, this tree demon wanted to suck a person's essence and blood as nourishment. Let me help you. Mu Ling saw that it was difficult for Pei Zishuan to take down the tree demon alone and immediately rushed forward to join the battle. However, the cave dwelling wasn't big and their hands and feet were tied in the battle. Especially for the tree demon, it was even more disadvantageous. Therefore, when the tree branches sprung up from the ground and wrapped around their feet, the tree demon with a human face and body and quickly left the cave dwelling. However, she didn't expect that she was surrounded by Guaziki and the others the moment she left the cave dwelling. Pei Zishuan and Mu Ling cut off the tree branches that were wrapped around their feet and quickly came out, only to see that at this time, the surrounding trees all started to move, attacking them. The tree branches were like ropes, but also like sharp blades, bringing with them a sharp aura. The tree branches swayed chaotically, the trees moved, causing them to be unable to deal with it. Feng Jiu didn't make a move. She just watched. When the tree she was leaning on stretched out its branches to wrap around her, she released her suppressive force. Immediately, the branches shrank back and didn't dare to make another move. Chapter 31:15. Therefore, it could be seen that Guaziki and the others were besieging the 1,000-year tree demon. The surrounding trees stretched out their branches and joined the battle. The nearby trees were all moving, except for the one that Feng Nine was leaning on, which was motionless. This caused the disciples who were entangled by the many branches to be stunned for a moment. They shouted, Mu Jiu, quickly help. You are nascent soul cultivators after all. If you can't even deal with a 1,000-year tree demon, then there's no need for you to continue. Fengjiu said calmly. She took out a fruit from her space and leaned on the tree to eat it while watching them fight. Hearing this, everyone's fighting spirit was aroused. They clenched their teeth and waved their swords and sabers. There were many branches and leaves scattered on the ground, and the 1,000-year tree demon was being attacked by Pei Zixuan, Mu Ling, Lin Qingjin and Yi Kaiji. Compared to the attacks of the other trees, this 1,000-year tree demon's attacks were extremely fierce. Its tree roots suddenly shot up from the ground and attacked them. Every attack was as fierce as a sword. If they could not dodge in time, they would be injured by the fierce aura. Whoosh! Hiss! The fierce sound was heard, followed by a scream. The disciple's surnamed Qin could not react in time and his calf was pierced by a sharp branch. He fell to the ground in an instant. The sharp tip of the branch pulled back and blood splattered on the ground. Senior. When the disciples with the surname Qin saw that their senior brother was injured, they hurriedly came to his side and protected him as they retreated to Mu Jiu's body. Although they didn't know why the tree demons didn't dare to attack them, they knew that it was probably the safest to stay by Mu Jiu's side. Mu Jiu, please take care of our senior. Please. The few disciples bowed to Fingzhou and asked for her help. Before she could say anything, they quickly joined the battle. The disciple named Qin sat on the ground, holding his leg that had been pierced by the tree branch. There was a bloody hole there, and the pain was bone-piercing, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. Fengzhou ate the fruit and glanced at it casually. She said as if it had nothing to do with her, "This bleeding has to be stopped quickly. Otherwise, if it continues to bleed like this, he will die." Hearing this, the disciple named Qin raised his head and looked at Mu Jiu. He knew in his heart that Mu Jiu had brought this upon himself. After all, Mu Jiu had warned them long ago and even told them to deal with that woman. He was the one who had protected that woman, but who would have thought? He gritted his teeth and endured the pain. He took out some hemostatic medicine from his Qinquan bag and sprinkled it on the wound. Then, he tore off a piece of his robe to bandage the wound. After doing all this, he felt as if all the strength in his body had been sucked out. He leaned against a big tree and panted. Perhaps it was because Fengzhou was there, but when the sharp branches reached towards them, they suddenly retracted, as if they were afraid of touching something terrifying. Seeing this, the disciple named Chen's eyes flashed. He looked at Mu Jiu who was leaning against the big tree and eating fruit and asked, "Why don't those tree demons dare to attack you?" This scene was too strange. No matter how he looked at it, it did not seem right. Fengzhou heard this and smiled slightly. She glanced at the disciple named Qin sitting next to her and said half-truthfully, "That is because they know that I am very dangerous." Chapter 31:16. On the other side, the tree demon saw that it could not gain any advantage and wanted to escape. It dug its roots deep into the ground and burrowed underground. Mu Ling and the rest stabbed their swords into the ground, wanting to cut off its escape route. However, they did not manage to hit it even after several attempts. Seeing this, Fengzhou's eyes flickered. Seeing that the tree demon was about to escape from this area, she dashed forward in a flash and snatched the sword from Mu Ling's hand. She dashed forward for over 10 meters before stabbing the sword in her hand into the ground with incomparable precision. Swoosh! Ah! When the sharp sword Qi attacked, a shrill scream was heard. When the scream was heard, the tree branch that was buried in the ground suddenly jumped out of the ground. The human-faced tree demon's body trembled and convulsed. Its bloodthirsty eyes stared at Fengzhou, who had stabbed its body, as if questioning her why she had cut off its escape route. The tree demon was very clear that if not for this human, it would definitely be able to escape. However, who knew that she would still attack in the end? Because of the hatred and violence in its heart, it used all its strength to shoot out more than 10 sharp branches and attack Fengzhou. "Cut off my escape route. Even if I die, I will drag you down with me. You overestimate yourself." Fengzhou glanced coldly at it. She moved the spiritual power in her hand and a flame suddenly appeared. The flame traveled from her hand to the sword in her hand. As she turned around and attacked, the branches were all burned and withered. The fire quickly burned the tree demon's body. Only a blood-curdling scream could be heard as the flames burned. The blood-curdling screams gradually became softer, and the aura surging in the air also dispersed with the breeze. As the intensity of the fire gradually decreased, until it was extinguished, a green crystal core that shone like an emerald appeared on the ground. Fengjiu went forward and picked up the fist-sized green crystal core. A smile appeared on her face. The wood attribute crystal core of a 1,000-year tree demon was also good for her. The surrounding people were already stunned. They had been busy for half a day, but they could not compare to Mujio's sword. When the tree demon disappeared, the surrounding trees that had been controlled by the demonic power also returned to normal. However, they all stood there in a daze and did not know what to say for a long time. Why was he so powerful? Why was he so strong? He could find the tree demon's body the moment he attacked and stabbed the tree demon's body, causing it to be unable to escape. Among the crowd, besides Mu Ling, who already knew Fengjiu's identity, even Pei Zixuan and Lin Qingjin could not digest the scene in front of them. They knew that Mujio was very strong, but the scenes that gradually unfolded were even more surprising than what they had expected. Roar! Before they could recover from their shock, a deep roar suddenly rang out. A powerful pressure spread out in the forest along with the roar, causing their hearts to jump. Divine beast, that was definitely the aura of a divine beast. It's to Joe. Chapter 31:17. Come this way. Follow me. Fengjiu shouted and quickly led them away. The disciple with the injured calf was supported by two of the Qin clan brothers as they followed closely behind the group. However, when they quickly flew for nearly 100 meters, suddenly, a roar came from behind them. That roar was like the roar of the King of Hell, causing people's hearts to tremble. Especially the two people who were supporting the injured disciple surnamed Qin. Cold sweat appeared on their foreheads. As they were supporting the disciple, their speed was slowed down and they were about 20 meters behind the people in front of them. When they looked back, they saw a cloud-swallowing divine beast roaring as it chased after them about 100 meters behind them. They were so frightened that they cried out and instinctively ran at an unprecedented speed. Quick, run quickly. That's a cloud-swallowing divine beast. Fengjiu, who was leading the way, raised his eyebrows when he heard the voice behind him. Cloud-swallowing divine beast. Was it real or fake? Her cloud-swallowing divine beast was still single. If it had a similar species, she could find a partner for it. Thinking of this, she slowed down and said to Mu Ling, "Lead them forward." With that, she walked towards the back. Mu Ling was about to speak when he saw that she was already about 20 meters behind. He was puzzled and didn't know what she was going to do. However, because he knew that the beast behind them was difficult to deal with, he quickly led them forward. Fengjiu came to the back and gradually slowed down. When he looked behind him, he was instantly delighted. It really was a cloud-swallowing divine beast, and it was a female one. It had already reached the 7th level of a divine beast. She, who was about to attack, smiled and said to cloud-swallowing divine beast in her space, "There's also a cloud-swallowing divine beast outside. It's a female divine beast. Do you want to come out and take a look? Do you want to conquer it yourself?" Fortunately, the restriction had disappeared. Otherwise, her contracted beast would not have been able to come out. Hearing this, cloud-swallowing divine beast, who was originally resting in the space, lazily turned over and said, "Master, I'm not interested. Come out and take a look. Maybe you'll be interested." With that, Fengjiu waved his sleeve and summoned cloud-swallowing divine beast out of the space. When cloud-swallowing divine beast appeared beside her in a flash of light, the female divine beast that was charging towards Fengjiu was stunned. It saw the majestic male divine beast turn its head arrogantly and looked down at it with a condescending gaze. Then, the majestic male divine beast leaped forward and knocked the female divine beast back. Roar! Bang! The female divine beast's roar, cloud-swallowing divine beast, and cloud-swallowing divine beast. The female divine beast was knocked to the ground. A long time. Fengjiu glanced at him and shook her head. How can you be so unkind to a woman? It's a mother beast after all. Cloud-swallowing divine beast looked at its master speechlessly. It really did not know what its master was thinking. After the female divine beast stood up, it stared at the majestic male divine beast in front of it. Its bloodthirsty eyes gradually turned into curiosity. Where did you come from? The female divine beast asked. The cloud-swallowing divine beast was already an extinct beast. Even in this place, it was the only one. Where did this male divine beast come from? He was already at the level of a divine beast. Chapter 31:18. Tun Yun raised its head arrogantly and glanced at the mother beast. It did not answer its question but looked at Fengjiu instead. Master, do you want me to stay by your side and protect you? You don't like this mother beast? Fengjiu blinked and asked. He glanced at the unmoving mother beast and smiled mysteriously. It seems that her Tun Yun's charm was not to be underestimated. Tun Yun said helplessly, Master, the higher the level of the beast, the harder it is for them to conceive offspring. Even if they have a partner, they will not be able to reproduce. It had never thought of finding a partner. Fengjiu chuckled. Have you forgotten what your master does? Don't worry. As long as you find a partner, I have a way for you to have offspring. Hearing those words, Tun Yun glanced at her, then at the mother beast not far away. He did not say anything, but with a flash of light, he shrunk back into his little beast form and followed Fengjiu. Not far away, the mother beast saw this and couldn't help but take 2 steps forward. However, she stopped as if she had thought of something. She stared blankly as the majestic male beast shrunk into a small ball. In the end, she also shrunk into a ball and followed behind them from afar. Tun Yun walked towards the mother beast and asked in a low voice, Do you want to die? Hurry up and leave this place. The mother beast was very happy to see Tun Yun talking to it. Where did you come from? How can you be a sacred beast? Tun Yun said fiercely, It's none of your business. It's my contracted beast. It's rare to see a mother beast that's also a Tun Yun. Are you interested in becoming a pair with it? Fengjiu asked the mother beast with a smile. The mother beast's eyes lit up when it heard this. The male beast was majestic and handsome. He looked strong and majestic. The mother beast took a liking to him at first sight and said, I'm willing. Fengjiu looked at Tun Yun and smiled. It was as if he was saying, Look. This mother beast has taken a liking to you. If that's the case, then follow me. You can shrink a little and follow me with Tun Yun, Fengjiu joked, deliberately giving the 2 beasts a chance to interact. The mother beast had no objections and shrunk to Tun Yun's size. She walked up to Tun Yun and asked, Why don't you have a partner? Are there no other cloud-swallowing beasts in other places? It had originally thought that if it could not find a suitable partner, it would stay in the cave by itself. It did not expect such a powerful cloud-swallowing beast to suddenly appear. Sacred beasts were rarely seen in this place. Its strength was really strong. It was so powerful that it did not dare to act presumptuously in front of it. I still have teammates. When we get there, the 2 of you should not speak in human language. At the same time, hide your own strength. Do not arouse their suspicion and guess. Fengjiu instructed. He glanced at the 2 small cloud-swallowing beasts at his feet. After they nodded, he walked forward and caught up with Mu Ling and the rest. Mu Ling had been running forward with his teammates while keeping an eye on the commotion behind him. When he sensed that the commotion behind him had calmed down, he heaved a sigh of relief. He stopped and said to everyone, "Let's wait here for Mujio to come back." Chapter 31:19. It's Mujio. Mujio is back, Gwiziki said excitedly. However, just as he finished speaking, he saw the two little beasts behind Mujio and was surprised. Why are there two little beasts? Everyone looked over and saw that there were indeed two little beasts behind Mujio. As they could not tell the level of the two little beasts, they turned their attention to Mujio. "Mujio, where's the godly beast? Why isn't it chasing after us?" "It left," Fengjiu said. "Rest for a while. There shouldn't be any problems in this area." Hearing this, everyone responded and found a place to sit down. However, each of them had a belly full of questions, but they didn't know how to ask. "Sister, how's your injury?" Lin Qingjin looked at his sister and asked. Seeing that her sleeve was still stained with blood, he said, "Let me help you bandage your wound." "Brother, it's fine. I've already applied medicine and the bleeding has stopped." As Lin Yushir spoke, she casually bandaged her wound and stood up to bandage the wounds of the others. "Brother, your shoulder is injured and you can't apply medicine yourself. Let me help you." She walked forward and took out medicine as she spoke. "Okay." Lin Qingjin agreed and took off his shirt, revealing the wound inside. After Lin Yushir helped him treat the wound, she applied medicine and bandaged it. Then, she helped him put on his clothes. "I'll go take a look at the others." Disciple Chen sat. The pain in his calf caused cold sweat to seep out of his forehead. He looked at Mu Ling and the rest, then looked at Mujio who had his arms crossed and his eyes closed, as well as the two little beasts squatting beside him. Finally, he gritted his teeth and said, "My leg's injury is quite serious. I think it will be difficult for me to walk. I want to go out first and give up this opportunity to train." He paused and said, "Mujio, I'm sorry. I was wrong this time. I shouldn't have doubted your words and shouldn't have urged the girl to stay." "It's fine," Fengjiu said casually. After all, she was not the one injured. Disciple Chen's lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He could tell that Mujio did not mind. Hence, he looked down and pinched the teleportation jade tablet at his waist. "Everyone, thank you for taking care of me these past few days. Take care." As soon as he finished speaking, he crushed the teleportation jade token. With a flash of light, he disappeared on the spot. Everyone was silent as they watched him leave. One of them had already left. Would there be more people who would leave in the future? That night, the atmosphere was a little heavy, and no one said anything. Only at dawn the next day, after resting, everyone continued their training. At this moment, they didn't know that as the restriction loosened, the four sects had also sent many venerables in to search for the disciples inside so that they could leave the secret realm as soon as possible. Perhaps it was because Tun Yun was following behind them, but from that day onwards, they basically did not encounter any more vicious beasts. Even if they did, those vicious beasts would quickly leave after roaming around. This strange scene made them feel very puzzled. However, they thought that it was all because of Mujio. Therefore, they made many guesses about his identity along the way. Chapter 31:20. On this day, Lin Qingjin and Pei Zixuan used the opportunity of hunting to pull Mu Ling to the side. "Do you know his identity?" Hearing this, Mu Ling's eyes flashed and instinctively shook his head. "I don't know." "You don't know? That's impossible. We saw a huge change in your attitude along the way," Pei Zixuan said, obviously not believing his words. Hearing this, Mu Ling sighed. "Don't ask anymore. Even if I know, I can't say. If I could, I would have said it long ago." He sighed helplessly and said to the two, "Let's go back quickly. The three of us have come out, they must be anxious from waiting." As he spoke, He did not wait for them to speak and quickly walked back. Seeing this, Pei Zixuan and Lin Qingjin looked at each other. Looks like he really knows. Furthermore, Mu Jiu's identity is probably not ordinary. Ever since the restriction here loosened, we have not met a single beast along the way. Even if we met one, those beasts did not come close and quickly left as if they were afraid of something. The two of them chatted for a while before heading back. When they came to the resting area, they saw Mu Jiu leaning against a tree to rest, while the two little beasts were squatting on the left and right sides of the tree branches. Mu Ling and the rest were preparing to roast meat. As time passed, the aroma of the meat filled the air. At this moment, a group of people walked out from the front. Seeing the group of 30 to 40 people quietly surrounding them, Mu Ling and the rest stood up cautiously. I was wondering where the aroma of the meat came from. So it's the people from Blue Star Immortal Sect roasting meat here. Looks like they knew that we were coming and prepared this meat for us. A man from the other party crossed his arms and hugged his sword as he stared at them. His gaze swept across them and sized up Mu Ling and the rest. Are you going to leave the things behind? Or do you need us to do it ourselves? The other party looked at Mu Ling and the rest mockingly. When his gaze swept past Gretchen's face, he revealed an inexplicable smile. Junior Sister Guan, long time no see. Hearing this, Lin Yusher asked softly, Senior Sister Guan, you know him? Gretchen looked at that person and her expression changed slightly. She lightly bit her lips and did not speak, but her hands and her sleeves were tightly clenched into fists. When the others saw that Gretchen's expression wasn't very good, they couldn't help but feel astonished. Did Gretchen really know this person? But what was their relationship? Why was the way the two of them looked at each other so strangely? Of course I know her. I'm her fiancé. As the man spoke, he looked at Gretchen with an evil smile on his face. I think the Guan clan has already informed you, right? Since we've met here, shouldn't we take the opportunity to cultivate our relationship? I didn't agree to this marriage. You have nothing to do with me. Gretchen said coldly. Under her sleeves, her fists were tightly clenched. She was trying her best to control her emotions. When the disciples behind him heard this, they all laughed out loud. Ha ha ha, Senior Brother Wang, is this really your fiancé? Why is she talking to you like that? Is she looking down on you? Senior Marshal Brother Wang, you're not following your husband's orders. What do you mean by lacking in moral integrity? Didn't you hear what that junior sister said? She has nothing to do with Senior Brother Wang. The disciples behind her mocked as they looked at Gretchen. Chapter 31-21. Impolite? Ha! How impolite? How can you be impolite to us? A man raised his eyebrows and smiled evilly. Senior brothers and junior brothers, listen to them. They actually said that they would be impolite to us. They really don't take us seriously. Do you think we should teach them a lesson? Do you think we're sick cats if we don't show our might? A man stood out and sneered at Mu Ling and the others. You're disciples of the four sects after all. How about this? Don't say that we're bullying you because we outnumber you. Let's have a one-on-one battle. The loser has to hand over everything he has. How about that? Mu Ling and the others' eyes flashed. They thought it would be a group battle. They didn't expect this person to propose such an idea. The outcome of a one-on-one battle was uncertain. However, they couldn't guarantee that these people would be angry after losing. Thus, Mu Ling, Pei Zixuan, and Lin Qingjin looked at each other. Then, Lin Qingjin smiled and walked forward. A one-on-one battle. I'm afraid you can't afford to lose. Hearing this, the man's face darkened. What do you mean? You're saying we can't afford to lose? Humph. Looks like you're very confident. Isn't that so? If this is a one-on-one battle and you lose, you'll be angry and attack us. Isn't that child's play? Lin Chengjin chuckled and glanced at them. I don't think you're men who keep your promises. Hearing this, everyone's eyes flashed. They could guess the other party's intentions. However, if they went back on their words, wouldn't that mean that they couldn't afford to lose? Couldn't beat them? Which supremacy of the cerulean planet are you the disciple of? You're quite brave, aren't you? The man sized him up. My master is CK, Lin Chengjin said. Oh, so you're the disciple of Supremacy C Quebec. I'll have to learn from you then. The man said to the people behind him. Senior brothers and junior brothers, do they think we don't dare to fight one-on-one? They even provoked us with words. Do you think we dare to fight one-on-one with them? Ha ha ha. Who's afraid of who? If we fight one-on-one, we'll be cowards. That's right. We've had a lot of group fights along the way. Let's have a one-on-one fight. I'd like to see what's so great about the blue planet. Finally, the man with the surname Wang walked out and stated, I'll go first. His gaze swept over the crowd and landed on Gretchen. Junior sister Guan, what do you think about it? Are you sure you want to go first? You're my fiancé, so why don't we have a friendly match? Gretchen gritted her teeth. Just when she was about to step forward, Pei Zishuan pressed down on her shoulder. He walked forward and said, Junior sister Guan is a female. You are a man fighting against a female. Even if you win, it would be an unfair victory. I am her eldest senior brother. How about I challenge you first in this battle? The man with the surname Wang didn't force the issue. After all, it wouldn't be outstanding even if he won against a woman. However, it would be a different story if he won against Venerable Sik's eldest disciple, Pei Zishuan. He sized up Pei Zishuan with a glance and curled his lips into a cold smile. All right, since you want to take the lead, then I'll accept your challenge. Let's see what you're capable of. As he spoke, he walked forward. Pei Zishuan also walked forward. He raised his hand and gestured for the people behind him to step back and make space for them. Chapter 31-22. Just by glancing at the two people below, she knew that Pei Zishuan would definitely win in this one-on-one fight. As CK's eldest disciple, Pei Zishuan's strength was obvious to all. He would definitely win the first battle, and it was a one-on-one fight. Below, the people on both sides retreated, and the two also pulled apart the distance between them. As their spiritual power surged, they rushed forward and unsheathed their swords to attack each other. A piercingly cold sword chi shot out with a swoosh, bringing with it a sharp sound of breaking through the air. Sword shadows shot out like shuttles, and when the two swords collided, a clear clanging sound rang out. The two swords were pressed against each other, and the distance between the two of them was shortened to only a step. Both of their auras did not give way to each other, and they were like two ferocious beasts, their bodies surging with powerful battle intent. As Pei Zishuan's sword slid down, sparks also flew out. Hiss! The ear-piercing sound caused the spectators to frown. They saw the two people fighting in front of them. Their movements and sword shadows were extremely fast, just like ghosts. Both of them had the strength of the peak of the Yuanying realm, but there was some difference in their combat power. Compared to the other party, Pei Zishuan's fighting strength was obviously better. After a dozen moves, the other party was gradually at a disadvantage. Pei Zishuan's face was still calm and steady, but the other party's forehead was already covered in sweat, and he could not hold on any longer. Because the more frightened and flustered he was, the more his fighting strength declined, and his strength and speed could not keep up. He was a little flustered and was unprepared, and was kicked out by Pei Zishuan. He flew out 10 meters and crashed into his fellow disciples, who supported him. You've lost, Pei Zishuan said in a low voice, and the sword in his hand was kept behind him. The man stared at him fiercely, and pushed away the people supporting him, saying, Who said I've lost? I haven't admitted defeat. He held his sword and attacked again. His speed was so fast that Pei Zishuan, who had already put away his sword, could not dodge in time, and retreated step by step. Seeing that the other party's sword was about to stab his chest, Pei Zishuan's eyes flashed, and he immediately dodged to the side. With a turn of his foot, he snatched the other party's sword from the side, and at the same time, he turned his hand, and the sword was held against the other party's neck. "Do you admit defeat now?" Pei Zishuan asked, lowering his sword. The sharp sword qi slashed across his neck, causing a trace of blood to seep out. The pain from his neck caused the man with the surname Wang to stiffen. He gritted his teeth and said, "I admit defeat." "Since you admit defeat, hand over the things on your body." Pei Zishuan said, but the sword on his neck did not leave. Hearing this, his expression changed slightly. Sternness flashed across his eyes. He stiffened his body, unwilling to take out his item. "Don't tell me you want to go back on your word," Pei Zishuan said as he pressed down on the sword on his neck as a warning. "Pei Zishuan, if you dare to injure me, my Wang clan will not let this matter rest," he threatened fiercely. Pei Zishuan's eyes narrowed when he saw this. He coldly glanced at the man before extending his hand to remove everything on the man's body, including the spatial rings and other things. Only after putting everything away did he remove the sword in his hand. "If you can't afford to lose, you shouldn't have fought with me." As Pei Zishuan spoke, he stabbed the sword in his hand into the ground. The sword stabbed into the ground and shook slightly. Chapter 31:23. Seeing this, one of the men gestured to the other man. The other party paused for a moment before walking out. He looked at Pei Zishuan and said, "As expected of Venerable CK's eldest disciple, your combat strength is indeed not weak. Since that's the case, let me take you on." Therefore, another man walked out and exchanged blows with Pei Zishuan. However, after the two of them exchanged over a dozen blows, the other man was also defeated by Pei Zishuan. However, after one of them lost, the other walked out. After 5 or 6 consecutive exchanges, one of the older men walked out with a smile. "What a surprise! You actually defeated 6 of our disciples in a row. Since that's the case, I have no choice but to take action." As the man spoke, he took out the sword at his waist and held it in his hand. He looked at Pei Zishuan, whose aura was slightly chaotic, and revealed an ambiguous smile. "I hope you can win again this time. Otherwise, all the things you won will fall into my hands." Looking at the person in front of him, Pei Zishuan's expression was somewhat grave. At this moment, he was a little tired and his aura was somewhat unstable. After all, he had fought 6 rounds in a row. Moreover, his opponent had fought with their lives on the line in every round, and he had also fought with all his strength. After 6 rounds, his aura was already slightly chaotic, and his physical strength and spiritual energy had been greatly consumed. Now that he was facing this person again, he was not confident in his heart. Could he still win? Especially this person. Previously, those people had walked out to challenge him under this person's gaze. The other party had originally planned to exhaust his physical strength. Now that he was facing him, he really did not know if he could win again. This is not fair. You have already fought 6 rounds with him. You have changed 6 people, but he has not changed at all. This round, I will take over," Guiziki said as he was worried that Pei Zishuan would not be able to handle it due to the excessive consumption of his spiritual energy. "Hehe, who wants to fight with you?" "I want to fight with him." "What about it? Do you want to go back on your word?" The man sneered. It was obvious that he had specially picked Pei Zishuan to fight. As long as he won this battle, he would naturally be able to take back the things he had lost earlier. On the tree, Fingjiu curled her lips as she watched the scene below, but did not make a sound. She actually wanted to see how long Pei Zishuan could last. At the sight of this, Lin Qingjin's gaze flickered and he smiled. Eldest senior brother, you've won so much. Shouldn't you share some with us? Hearing this, Mu Ling smiled. That's right. I want some too. Pei Zixuan was stunned when he heard this, and then he smiled. Right, isn't it too selfish to only keep it for yourself? Since it's like this, then I'll share some of the things I won with all of you. As he spoke, he took out the things he'd won. Seeing this scene, the expressions of those people changed. If this was the case, then they would have to challenge the person who possessed those things if they wanted to take back those things. Damn it! Originally, as long as they fought with him and defeated him, they would be able to take back those things. They did not expect the people of Cerulean Star to be so treacherous. Fengjiu smiled when she heard this. Lin Qingjin's thoughts were meticulous, and ordinary people would not be able to scheme against him. In this way, he could divert the opponent's battle against Pei Zixuan. Even if they lost this round, they would not lose everything. Chapter 31-24. Lin Qingjin, Mu Ling, and Su Kaiji separated the items into 3 portions and kept them. As the items were divided, the 3 of them were also targeted by the other people. Come on. Let's end this quickly. Pei Zixuan looked at the man and said. While they were dividing the items, he had also relaxed a little. However, it was impossible for his physical strength and spiritual power to keep up. The man narrowed his eyes and retreated a bit with his sword in hand. The aura of spiritual energy on his body surged, and a fierce murderous aura spread out from his body. Just the surge of his aura made people feel that it was very different. Even though they were both at the peak of the nascent soul stage, this person did not hide his murderous aura, and this made Mu Ling and the rest nervous. Whoosh! Clang! When the sword and saber clashed, a fierce aura shot out and a cold murderous aura spread. The 2 of them were like swimming dragons. Between the sword and saber, a murderous aura overflowed. Especially the man on the other side. Every move was fatal and he looked as if he wanted to kill Pei Zixuan. This person wants to kill Zixuan. Mu Ling said in a low voice and looked ahead with a cold gaze. They were all disciples of the 4 sects, and if there was no great enmity between them, they would not kill other disciples here. But this person's attacks were unusually vicious, and every move was fatal. They could not help but break out in cold sweat for Mu Ling. If his reaction was slightly slower, death would be waiting for him. It was one thing when they had just exchanged blows, but after a long battle, Pei Zixuan, whose physical strength could not keep up, was afraid that the sword's shadow flashed past, cutting through a tree not far away. With a swoosh, a deep sword mark was left on the trunk of the big tree. The fallen leaves fluttered in the air along with the vibrating sword chi and slowly fell to the ground. The 2 swords clashed continuously. However, after more than 10 moves, Pei Zixuan was suppressed and retreated step by step. Gradually, he was in a sorry state. The other party saw the sword and took the opportunity to attack. A sword aura flashed past and Pei Zixuan's arm was slashed. Hiss! He sucked in a breath of air and felt a chill seeping out from the wound. That cold feeling was like an ice cube that quickly entered his body, causing him to involuntarily shiver. Fengjiu squinted his eyes when he saw this. There's poison on the blade. When the man holding the sword sneered and took a step forward to take Pei Zixuan's life, the others retreated more than 10 meters and were unable to help in time. Pei Zixuan was cut by the sword, and one of his arms felt stiff and heavy, making it difficult for him to lift it. Moreover, as he circulated the spiritual energy in his body, it made the poison in his body flow faster. Suddenly, he felt his blood rush up, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Pooh! Eldest senior brother. Zi Xian. Senior brother. Eldest senior brother. Cries of alarm rang out as Mu Ling and the rest rushed forward. However, no matter how fast they were, they could not outrun the poisoned sword in the man's hand. Just as the sword was about to pierce through the space between the man's eyebrows, everyone saw a white figure leap down from the tree. With a light flick of his sleeve, the man holding the sword was sent flying. Bang! Pooh! He fell heavily to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. He clutched his chest with one hand and stared fiercely at the figure that had suddenly appeared. Chapter 31-25. Fengjiu glanced at him indifferently, then used her hand to seal a few of Pei Zixuan's major acupoints. Mu Ling and the rest rushed up from behind to support him, then she glanced at the man on the ground. "Give me the antidote." Her voice was indifferent, but there was an inexplicable majesty in it. Her imposing manner caused the hearts of the surrounding people to tighten as they tried to guess the identity of this person. Even though the white-robed youth in front of them was wearing the robes of the Cerulean Star Immortal Sect, his powerful aura still made them somewhat suspicious. Were all the disciples of the Cerulean Star so powerful? He sent a nascent soul stage cultivator flying with one strike. Antidote. There's no antidote. The man on the ground said as he stared coldly at Pei Zixuan. You're dead meat. Guiziki and the rest panicked when they heard this. There's no antidote. Then what should they do? Could it be that this poison is very powerful? Senior brother Zixuan will die here. There's no antidote. Fengjiu asked casually. She slowly walked forward and came to the side of the sharp sword that had fallen to the side. With a stomp and a flick of her foot, she picked up the sword that had fallen to the ground and held it in her hand. She twirled the long sword in her hand and a cold light flashed in front of everyone. Before anyone could react, the sharp blade of the sword pierced towards the chest of the disciple on the ground. Ah! Senior brother he! Senior brother he! A blood-curdling scream rang out and the surrounding disciples also cried out in alarm. However, no one stepped forward. They watched as the white-robed youth calmly pierced the sword into their senior brother He's chest. Their hearts couldn't help but rise to their throats. If the sword had been slightly off course, they were afraid that the sword would have pierced right through their senior brother He's chest. At that time, even if the sword wasn't poisoned, there would be no saving him. The sharp sword pierced through his chest and the poison quickly seeped into the disciple's body. This shocked the disciple and he quickly took out the antidote. However, before he could open the antidote, he endured his fear and took it away with a flick of the sword in the youth's hand. Give me back the antidote. The disciple cried out in alarm and wanted to snatch it back. However, due to the pain from his wound, he groaned and fell back to the ground. Fengjiu glanced at him and unhurriedly opened the lid to take a sniff. Her eyes were still on the man who had fallen to the ground. When she saw him staring at her, her heart trembled slightly. When she smelled the scent of the medicine from the bottle, the corners of her lips slightly curled into a smile. But in the eyes of that man, this smile was as terrifying as a demon. This is the antidote, is. Hearing these words and seeing the young man walking over with the bottle of medicine, he panicked and hurriedly said, I'll take it. An antidote and the real antidote. Don't come here, don't. As soon as he said this, the surrounding people realized that he had pretended to take out the antidote, but he had actually taken out the poison. At a time like this, he still had the mind to harm others. In an instant, everyone looked at him with complicated gazes, especially the disciples who were on his side. They were on their guard. If they were careless, would they fall into his trap as well? It was worrying to be on the same side as someone like him. Chapter 31-26. No, don't. Instinctively, he felt that this young man was not joking. He really would dare to kill him. Antidote, this is the antidote. If you don't believe me, I'll take it too, I'll take it too. He quickly took out the real antidote and swallowed one pill. Then, he endured the pain in his chest and handed it to Fengjiu with both hands. Fengjiu glanced at it and reached out to take it. She opened it and sniffed it, then turned around and handed the antidote to Mu Ling, feed it to him. However, at this moment, the man on the ground saw Fingzhou turn around and pulled out the dagger in his boot and charged forward. Be careful! Gretchen and the others cried out in alarm. They quickly rushed forward, but no matter how fast they were, they could not outrun the man who had pulled out his sword and charged forward. However, Fingzhou did not even turn around. She only glanced at him, then dodged to the side and kicked him away. Roar! At this moment, Tun Yun, who was squatting on the tree, was enraged. He leaped down from the tree and transformed into his original form, pouncing on the man who had been thrown out. Blood flowed from the man's mouth, but he still held the dagger in his hand. He was about to stand up when Tun Yun pounced on him and pressed him down. Tun Yun opened his mouth and bit off the man's hand that was holding the dagger. Hiss! Ah! A blood-curdling scream rang out. The smell of fresh blood filled the air as the man's arm was bitten off. This bloodthirsty and cruel scene frightened the cultivators who were about to step forward. They all cried out in alarm. Ah! Super divine beast. The disciples were all stunned. Seeing the powerful aura released from Tun Yun's body, their legs turned to jelly. The mother beast on the tree saw that Tun Yun had transformed into his original form and also transformed into his original form. Seeing the other little beast transform into a level 7 divine beast, the surrounding people were all stunned. They all looked on in shock and fear. Compared to the disciples, Mu Ling and the others finally understood why they had not met any ferocious beasts along the way when they saw the two Tun Yun beasts. With these two powerful vicious beasts following them, which vicious beast would be so blind to pounce on them? Looking at the scene in front of them again, the man's arm was torn off along with his robes. The bloody scene and the brutal scene made them shudder with fear. It was too terrifying. It was really tearing at the slightest disagreement. How could a human's body withstand the tearing and chewing of a divine beast? That man was also seeking his own death. He clearly didn't make a move against him, and obviously didn't want to let him go. Yet, he still rushed to his own death. Who could he blame for ending up like this? Tun Yun stepped on the man's body and pressed him to the ground. It glanced at the man who was screaming in fear, then turned to Fingzhou and asked, Master, how should we execute this man? The moment it opened its mouth, it was clear that it didn't care about the man's life at all. However, no one said anything because they felt that it was better to speak less in front of a super divine beast. Don't kill me. I am a disciple of the 4 sections. The disciples of the 4 sects can't kill each other. Chapter 31:27. Fengzhou glanced at the man and said calmly, Since we are all disciples of the 4 sects, give him a quick death. Yes. Swallowing Cloud replied. In the next moment, the man screamed in fear and snapped his neck. Behind him, Mu Ling and the others wanted to speak but saw that the man was already dead. They moved their lips but could not say a word. Mu Ling, in particular, was even more shocked. This was Fingzhou, the master of their patriarch. The dignity of the strong was not to be violated. Especially those who had the intention to kill, they would not let them off easily. You. The disciples retreated in fear. If it was just the disciples of the cerulean planet, it would be one thing. But now, there was another with unfathomable power. Moreover, there was a sacred beast and a level 7 sacred beast. They would only rush forward if they wanted to die. What about us? Fingzhou glanced at them and said calmly, Don't tell me you want to try his fate. When he said this, the people shook their heads in shock. No, we don't dare. Oh. Is that so? Then how did he die? Fengzhou asked as his gaze swept across the people. When they heard this, their hearts tightened and they hurriedly said, He was attacked by a ferocious beast and died. We promise that we will not say a word about what happened here. Not a word. These people were worried that the other party would kill them all if he wanted to kill them. They could not help but quickly promise. In the end, they even swore. Seeing this, Fengzhou curled his lips. Very good. Remember your words. Otherwise, if I remember one day, I will go to your sects and have a chat with you. When they heard this, their expressions changed and they all looked at the young man with pale faces. If they had been thinking of going back and telling their masters to teach this young man a lesson, they had all given up now. This person was a madman. They would be crazy to provoke him. Get lost. Fengzhou said and glanced at them indifferently. She was not afraid of getting into trouble for killing a disciple of the sect. However, CK and Mu Axayan were afraid of being punished by the sect. They had threatened these people to keep their mouths shut. Looking at the sacred beast and the rank 7 divine beast, other than Mu Ling, Pei Zishuan, Lin Qingjin, and the rest all looked at him with complicated gazes. The scene in front of them was so clear that they couldn't even pretend to be confused. Mu Zhou, can you tell us who you are? Su Kaiji asked as his gaze fell on the young man in white. When he heard this, the corners of Mu Ling's mouth twitched. He remembered what Fengzhou, she was his ancestor. These words sounded very impolite and presumptuous, but after thinking about it carefully, he came to his senses. Wasn't she his ancestor? There was such a great ancestor in front of him, and he still asked who she was. She was the ancestor of the Mu family, so she was naturally the ancestor of the Su family. If someone else had asked this question, they would not have found it so strange. However, it was Su Kaiji. If she said, I am your ancestor, what would everyone do? Chapter 31:28. He was not the only one. Other than Mu Ling, everyone was curious. They wanted to know who he was. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, Fengzhou smiled. My name is Fengzhou. My name is Fengzhou. When these words came out, everyone was stunned for a moment. Fengzhou. What a familiar name. They seemed to have heard it somewhere before. When Fei Kaiji heard this name, he was stunned for a while before his eyes widened. He looked at the young man in front of him in shock. You are Fengzhou. Then wasn't that his family's ancestor? He looked at Mu Ling. You already knew. Mu Ling smiled bitterly. I knew a little earlier than you. Fengzhou. Xianyuan Mo's and Fengzhou. It was them. It was her. Pei Zishuan and Lin Qingjin were shocked. The young man in front of them was a woman. He was their ancestor's master. No matter how they guessed Mu Zhou's identity, they did not expect him to be their ancestor's master. He was one of the 2 people who caused a ruckus in the 4 major immortal sects competition and became famous in the 4 major immortal sects. Fengzhou was said to be an alchemy venerable level alchemist. No wonder he had a sacred beast. No wonder he had a level 7 divine beast following him. No wonder they were able to turn misfortunes into blessings. They had a peak heavenly god level expert with them. Is that the master of Venerable CK and Venerable Mu Axayan? Shanghai stared at Fengzhou with wide eyes. He could not believe his eyes. So, you are a woman. And you are a peak heavenly god. Heavens! They were actually training together with her. No wonder they were able to turn misfortunes into blessings. His luck was too good. He actually met Fengzhou here. Fengzhou looked at them and said, I came here to find a 1,000-year-old elixir. I didn't plan to get involved. She said helplessly. Initially, he didn't intend to get involved, but along the way, he made several moves. Furthermore, the restriction in this place had disappeared. It could only be said that many things were unexpected. Hearing this, everyone finally realized that she had come here to look for thousand-year-old spiritual herbs. Thinking about it, it made sense. She was an alchemy venerable, so she would definitely be a little paranoid about spiritual medicines. She actually dared to take such a huge risk and enter. It had to be known that when the restrictions were still in place, her strength was completely suppressed. She was not much stronger than them at all. Fengjiu looked at them and said, "It's getting more and more dangerous inside. Even if you know who I am, I suggest that you leave this place first. The deeper you go, the more dangerous it is for you." "We're not afraid," Xinghai said. "We can do it." Fengjiu glanced at him indifferently, and his tone became more and more impolite. He said directly, "If I don't protect you, you won't survive a day in here. What's more, you're delaying my journey." Hearing this, the crowd could not help but fall silent. That was true. If she had not protected them, how could they have survived the attack of the divine beast? Perhaps without her, they really wouldn't survive a day. Seeing this, Mu Ling thought for a moment, then looked at the crowd behind him and said, "How about this? You all go out first. This place is indeed not suitable for training. We have to tell the outside world that the restrictions have loosened." Chapter 31-29. Lin Qingjin glanced at Mu Ling and smiled. "It's better for me to follow too. I know where the thousand-year black spiritual tendons are. This will save you a lot of time." "Then I want to follow too, Su Kaiji said, but was interrupted before he could finish. "All right. Just the three of them will follow me, the rest can leave." Fengjiu looked at them and said, "You guys go out first. The commotion in the mystic realm is so big, I think if the sects outside know, they will definitely send supremacies in. Before your lives are in danger, hurry and leave this place." Hearing this, everyone looked at each other and nodded. "All right. Then we will leave tomorrow. It's already late, we can wait for another night before leaving. Let's deal with the corpse." Fengjiu said and glanced at the corpse not far away. Hence, two disciples went forward to deal with the corpse. They returned to the fire to eat roasted meat and warm the fire. However, because they knew Fengjiu's identity, their gazes always fell on her. In the end, Fengjiu directly jumped onto a tree to rest. The two cloud-swallowing divine beasts shrunk and lay under the tree, narrowing their eyes as they looked around. "Why don't you let me follow? He is also our Su family's founder." Su Kaiji looked at Mu Ling and the rest with some confusion. Mu Ling and the rest smiled but did not say much. Among the three of them, two of them were their master's eldest disciples. As for Lin Qingjin, because he knew the location of the thousand-year black spiritual tendons, it was natural for him to follow. Of course, they knew that out of so many people, only the three of them followed. They might feel a little unbalanced, but they had no choice. "Brother, you have to be careful in here. You must take good care of yourself," Lin Yusha reminded him worriedly. Lin Qingjin smiled. "Don't worry. I know, don't worry about me, I will be very safe in here." With a peak heavenly god expert, as well as a sacred beast and a level 7 divine beast guarding them, even if they were to meet any ferocious beasts, they would definitely be safe. Mu Ling and Pei Zishuan both instructed their junior brothers to keep their mouths shut about Fengjiu. Everyone also expressed that they understood and wouldn't talk too much about this matter. That night, because they knew that there were two powerful divine beasts guarding them, and Fengjiu was also here, they slept very soundly. It wasn't until the next morning when the sun shone through the forest and shone on their bodies that they slowly woke up. It's daybreak. They sat up, rubbed their eyes, and composed themselves. They saw that Fengjiu, Mu Ling, and the others were ready to leave and were looking at them. Seeing this, they didn't say anything. They just stood up, bowed to them, and said goodbye. Then, they crushed their teleportation jade tablets and left the secret realm. As they left, Fengjiu looked at the three people beside him and said, "Follow me. Unless it is absolutely necessary, they won't show their true form and release their aura. So, for the rest of the journey, you have to be 120% alert." Chapter 31:30. Under the morning sun, four figures lightly tiptoed through the dense forest. The morning birds and insects chirped between the branches and leaves. The few of them moved very quickly, especially with Fengjiu leading the way. The three of them followed behind, not daring to slow down at all. If they did, she would disappear into the dense forest in the blink of an eye. They did not rest for the entire morning. The three of them followed Fengjiu in front and were already panting and sweating profusely. Their physical strength was gradually unable to keep up. It was also at this moment that the figure in front finally stopped. "Let's rest for a while," Fengjiu said as she leapt onto a tree to rest. The three of them panted as they reached the tree. After looking up, they supported themselves against the tree for a while. When their breathing gradually stabilized, they sat down and took out some water to drink. 3 fruits were thrown into their arms. The three of them caught them, thanked him, and began to eat. Fengjiu leaned against the tree and closed her eyes to rest. However, when she released her divine sense, she faintly heard a cry for help. Even though the voice was very weak, when she heard it, she still opened her eyes and looked in a certain direction. When the 3 people under the tree saw this, they could not help but stand up. "What's wrong?" "Front left. You guys go and help," Fengjiu said and gestured for the 3 of them to go. Hearing this, the 3 of them were startled for a moment and quickly went in the direction she indicated. After they had moved about 500 meters, they saw a few disciples being chased by a few ferocious beasts. The disciples were covered in wounds and were covered in blood. It was almost impossible to distinguish the original color of their robes. "Senior brother, save us." When the disciples saw the 3 of them, they hurriedly called for help and staggered towards them. Seeing the ferocious beasts behind them open their mouths and pounce towards them, the 3 of them quickly made their move. Xiao! 3 rays of sword chi shot out. The sharp sword chi cut open a wound on the ferocious beast. Blood dripped from the wound and the ferocious beast changed its target. Roar! With a deafening sound, the beast's sharp claws flashed and swiped at Lin Qingjin. Lin Qingjin spun the sword in his hand and chopped off the beast's claws. Roar! The claw was cut off and blood seeped out. The ferocious beast let out a shrill cry and quickly retreated, not daring to move forward. The other ferocious beasts bared their sharp teeth and hissed. One of them roared at the sky. In the next moment, the other ferocious beasts pounced on the 3 of them with a fierce and bloodthirsty look. They bit fiercely at the 3 of them. The disciples were so scared that their faces turned pale. They wanted to go forward and help, but they couldn't help but retreat until they hit a big tree behind them. What they didn't see was that Fengjiu was also watching the battle in front of them from the tree they were standing on. The fierce beasts were fighting against Mu Ling and the other 2. The fighting strength of those fierce beasts wasn't low. Facing the danger of death, the 3 of them didn't dare to have a trace of luck. They fought with all their strength, and because of this, their fighting spirit surged, causing the atmosphere in the air to slightly condense. Chapter 31:31. On the big tree, among the dense leaves, a youth wearing the robes of the Blue Star Immortal sect stood between the branches. Because the sunlight shining down from above was too dazzling, they could not see his face clearly. They used their hands to block the sunlight, and when they looked up again, the youth's unremarkable face was reflected in their eyes. "If we can't find its weakness with so many attacks, it's just a waste of energy," Fengjiu said indifferently. He continued to look at the scene in front of him. Even when he saw the 3 of them being attacked and injured by the beasts, he did not help. Weakness? What was the weakness of these beasts? Lin Qingjin's eyes flashed as he stared at one of the beasts. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat. He leaped up and directly sat on the back of the beast. No matter how the beast shook and hit him, he did not get off. Instead, he clamped his legs tightly together and suddenly raised his sharp sword, fiercely stabbing it into the top of the beast's head. A-oh! The long sword pierced into the beast and a shrill scream suddenly sounded. The sound cut through the air and reverberated in their ears for a long time. When he pulled out the long sword, a column of blood splashed out at the same time. The ferocious beast finally fell forward, its whole body lying on the ground, twitching for a while until its whole body stiffened and died. Seeing this, Mu Ling and Pei Zixuan also changed their attack to the top of the beast's head. Not long after, the other beasts either died or escaped. As the crisis was over, the three of them took a deep breath and looked at the corpses of the beasts on the ground and kept their long swords. The few disciples stared blankly at this scene and suddenly regained their senses. They hurriedly thanked them. "Thank you, Senior Brother Mu, Senior Brother Pei and Senior Brother Lin for saving us." Hearing this, the three of them were slightly moved. "You know us. We are also disciples of the Blue Star Immortal Sect, so we know you three senior brothers." As they spoke, they lowered their heads to look at their tattered robes that were stained with blood and their original color could not be distinguished. Then, they thought of the narrow escape from death and could not help but cry. Seeing the few people standing in front of them crying silently, the three of them were startled. "What are you doing?" It was fine if the female disciples were crying, but why were the male disciples crying as well? "Senior brother, out of the 12 people in our team, only a few of us are still alive. The rest are all dead. They died under the claws of the vicious beasts." They sobbed as they looked at the three people in front of them and said, "Our teleportation jade tablets also disappeared when we were escaping. We can't leave this place. We can only wait here until the end of the training time and be teleported out. However, there are very powerful ferocious beasts here. I'm afraid we won't be able to get out alive." Hearing this, the three of them could not help but frown slightly. No teleportation jade token? That would be troublesome. For a moment, the three of them couldn't help but look at the Fengjiu on the tree, silently asking how they should deal with this matter. Seeing their gazes, Fengjiu took out his wine gourd and drank a mouthful of wine. His expression was somewhat lazy. "Why are you looking at me? I can't get out either." Hearing this, the three of them thought for a moment and said to the few disciples, "You guys sit down and rest first. Treat your wounds and let us think of a way." Chapter 31-32. Mu Ling and the other two discussed. She probably won't agree to bring them along. If we leave them behind, they'll probably die here soon. Without the transportation formation, there are only two ways. One is to be automatically teleported out after the training ends. The other is that someone from outside the secret realm can come in and bring a transportation jade token. Otherwise, they'll really. What do we do now? We can't just leave them behind, right? Why don't we let them go outside? Compared to the inside, the chances of survival in the outer regions are higher. The problem is that they won't be able to go outside. It's not like you don't know how dangerous the journey is. The three of them discussed for a while but couldn't come up with a solution. In the end, they had no choice but to go to Fengjiu. "You decide." Fengjiu glanced at them and said, "It's only about 2 months until we get out. Since we don't have a transportation jade token, we'll wait here. When the training ends, we'll be automatically teleported out." She jumped down from the tree and said, "There's a cave not far from here. You can stay there. I'll set up a barrier outside the cave to prevent ferocious beasts from getting close and injuring you." Hearing this, Mu Ling and the other two heaved a sigh of relief. It was good that she was willing to help. As long as she was willing to help, they believed that there was no problem that couldn't be solved. "We still have some distress signals from the sects here. Take them. We guessed that the supremacies from the sects outside will come in, so you can release a distress signal once in a while. If a supremacies see it, they may be able to bring you out of the secret realm in advance. Pei Zishuan said and passed the signals to them. Thank you, senior brother. They received the signals and thanked him. Then, they followed Fengzhou and left the place. They walked further ahead and found a cave. Fengzhou set up a barrier outside the cave and said, as long as you stay in this barrier and don't come out, no matter how strong the ferocious beasts are, they won't be able to break it. However, you must remember that once you walk out of this barrier, it will be destroyed along with you. We definitely won't go out. They promised. Knowing that they would not bring them along, they could only hide here to recuperate and wait for the training to end. Lin Qingjin helped them release a distress signal before saying, we'll be leaving first. Take care of yourselves. Here are some fasting pills. Keep them. These should be enough to last you until you get out. Thank you, senior brother Lin. They thanked him again. Mu Ling and the others cupped their hands and bowed, then followed Fengzhou and left. Not long after they left, two venerables from the Blue Star Immortal sect flew over from the sky. They looked around and found the cave. Are there any disciples of the Blue Star Immortal sect here? One of the venerables' voice contained a powerful pressure. Because they could not see inside the cave and there was a barrier outside, they could not get close. The disciples who had just sat down to rest in the cave were startled when they heard this voice. This voice sounds like Master's. Chapter 31-33. Master. They shouted and quickly helped each other out of the boundary. Sure enough, as they walked out of the boundary, the airflow in the air shook and the boundary disappeared into thin air. The two supremacies looked at the strange boundary and couldn't help but be shocked. They looked at each other and quickly walked forward to look at them. Seeing that their bodies were covered in blood, they couldn't help but ask worriedly, how did you guys get injured like this? Why are there only a few of you? Where are the senior and junior brothers who teamed up with you? Master, there were 12 of us in our group. However, the others all perished in here. Fortunately, we were saved by senior brother Mu Ling, senior brother Pei Zishuan, and senior brother Lin Qingjin. There's one more person we haven't seen before. As they spoke, they did not know who the young man who had set up the barrier for them was. Hearing this, the two supremacies were slightly surprised. You guys met them? Were they the ones who set up this barrier? Where did they go? They asked a series of questions because the three of them weren't ordinary people. Why did they leave after coming here? The boundary was set up by another person. We haven't seen that person before. One of the disciples said, we only met the 4 of them, but they didn't stay here. After they set up a barrier to protect us, they left and went in that direction. That disciple pointed in the direction that the 4 of them had left in before he spoke. You guys are injured to this extent, why don't you use the teleportation jade token to leave? As he spoke, the supremacies looked at their waists and couldn't help but frown. Where are your teleportation jade tokens? We lost our teleportation jade tokens when we were being chased by the ferocious beasts. The few of them lowered their heads and said. It was because of this that they couldn't leave this place. Hearing this, the other supremacies smiled. It's okay, I'm prepared. As he spoke, he took out a few white jade tokens and said to the few of them, come, drip a drop of your blood into it. When the time comes, crush the jade token and leave. Quickly return to the sect to recuperate. Thus, the few of them followed the supremacy's instructions. After reactivating the teleportation jade token, they crushed it and left. After the few of them left, the two supremacies looked at each other and said, the person who set up the boundary is not simple. That's right, among the disciples, no one has such ability. Let's go. Let's catch up with them and get them out of here quickly. One of the venerable ones said and shook his head, these people are really something. Why are they still staying here when they know that it's dangerous? What a mess. As they spoke, the two of them quickly chased in the direction that the disciple had mentioned. On the other hand, Fengjiu was leading Pei Zishuan and the other two through the dense forest. Naturally, he didn't know that two venerables were chasing after them from behind. In the dense forest, Fengjiu stopped picking because he had discovered a spiritual herb. At this time, Lin Qingjin's voice sounded. It's there. It's that cliff on that side of the mountain. The 1,000-year black spirit tendons are there. Lin Qingjin pointed at the cliff in the distance and said excitedly, that's the place. I can't be wrong. Hearing this, Fengjiu looked in the direction he was pointing, and his gaze also fell on the cliff in the distance. The trees here did not block the view, so they could see the cliff in the distance at a glance. Chapter 31-34. Pei Zishuan and Mu Ling looked in that direction. Seeing that it was still quite a distance away, they said, it looks like it's not far away. However, if we want to get there, it'll take at least 1 or 2 days. If they walked in the dense forest, it would naturally take 1 or 2 days. However, they also knew that if they flew over directly on their swords, they would probably reach there in a day. However, in this dense forest, if they flew in the sky, they would probably be targeted by flying ferocious beasts and become the target of their attacks. Fengjiu, who was looking in the direction of the cliff, moved her ears slightly. She turned her head slightly to look behind her and vaguely sensed movement. She released her divine sense and looked in that direction. When she saw 2 supremacies from the Blue Star Immortal sect killing 2 ferocious beasts that were pouncing towards them, her eyes flashed slightly. The 2 of them followed from behind. Clearly, they had sent the disciples in the cave away. Seeing that they had easily killed the 2 ferocious beasts and were heading towards them, she immediately withdrew her divine sense and said to them, the 2 supremacies from the Blue Star are here. Do you want to go back with them? Hearing this, the 3 of them were slightly surprised. Supremacies really came in. Then let's go quickly so that they won't catch up. Hearing this, Fengjiu's lips curled up slightly. She glanced at the 3 of them and said, let's go. As soon as she finished speaking, she quickly rushed out. The 3 people behind her also quickly followed. Because they knew that the 2 supremacies were behind them, they did not dare to slow down. They were afraid that the 2 supremacies would catch up to them. Not long after they left, the 2 supremacies arrived. Their faces could not help but darken. These brats. Just now, one of them used his divine sense to detect us and actually ran away. This is outrageous. I think they don't want to go out and are intentionally avoiding us. The other supremacies said. He thought for a moment and said, they're not weak. It can even be said that they're the best among disciples of the same strength. Now that they're still being chased by us, they probably have the confidence to survive here. Instead of chasing a few disciples who are avoiding us, why don't we look for the others first? Hearing this, the first supremacies was silent for a moment. In the end, he nodded. All right. Let's go. Thus, the 2 of them changed directions. As they walked, they used their spiritual power to call out to the disciples of the Blue Star Immortal sect. Sensing that the 2 supremacies were not following, Fengjiu gradually, she slowed down and waited for the 3 people behind her. Seeing her slow down, the 3 of them asked, are they not following us? Let's go, Fengjiu said. Then, she heard a bang in the sky. It seemed that there was another distress signal. It's a distress signal from the Qingqing Immortal sect. Mu Ling said, looking at the location. It's quite a distance from us. Even if they wanted to go and take a look, they couldn't, because that place was too far away from them. They couldn't save him, but a supremacy from the Qingqing Celestial sect saw it and quickly rushed over. Chapter 31-35. On this evening, it was rare to see Fengjiu stop and roast wild game for them to eat. At this time, the three of them were already covered in wounds and looked extremely miserable. His black hair was a little messy, with a few strands of hair hanging down from his head. There were even leaves stuck on his head. His dirty and blood-stained robes were either torn by tree branches or scratched by the claws of ferocious beasts. Before the wounds had even scabbed over, new wounds had been added to them. The three of them did not look like the elegant young masters they used to be. "I've never worn such dirty clothes before," Lin Qingjin said with a smile as he bandaged the wound on his arm. He said, "It's only been 2 days, and there are already so many injuries on my body. Even master's training wasn't this harsh." Hiss. Mu Ling pulled at the wound on his back and could not help but gasp. He said to Pei Zixuan, "Do me a favor, sprinkle some medicine on the wound on my back." Pei Zixuan took over and helped him treat the wound. "This scar is not shallow, it will probably leave a scar. It's fine as long as I can keep my life. If there are scars, then there are scars," Mu Ling said nonchalantly. After all, he was not a girl, so he did not care much about scars. "If you want to eat, cut it yourself. After eating, quickly take the time to rest," Fengjiu said, and let the two little beasts guard the surroundings while she sat by the fire and ate the roasted meat. After the three of them treated their wounds, they tore off some roasted meat to eat. In the night, the few of them sat in a circle, and some of them leaned against a big tree to rest. Until the next morning, when the sky had just brightened, the few of them who were sleeping soundly were woken up and continued towards their destination. With their strength, they easily passed by the ferocious beasts at the foot of the mountain, avoided the dangers in the dense forest, and came to the side of the cliff. Fengjiu looked up and saw that they were halfway up the mountain, and on the side of the cliff, clouds and mist spread out, and the bottom of the cliff was endless. "You guys wait for me here," she said to the three people behind her. "Be careful." The three of them said, but they didn't follow. As soon as she finished speaking, she tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and directly stepped on the clouds in the air. She headed towards the mountainside of the cliff, leaving only the two mythical beasts to guard them. The mother beast watched as Fengjiu left and then looked at Tun Yun. She couldn't help but approach him and ask, "Aren't you going to follow him? Aren't you worried that master will be in danger?" Swallow Cloud glanced at it and said, "You're still not leaving. Why are you following us?" "Master told me to leave with you, so of course I'll follow you." She looked at Tun Yun. "Furthermore, you are the strongest of my kind that I have ever seen. I like you." Tun Yun scoffed, "You haven't seen anything stronger. Even if there are others, no matter how strong or powerful they are, I still think you're the strongest," the female beast said shyly. She moved closer to Tun Yun with a fawning look. The corners of the three people's mouths twitched as they watched. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have known that beasts knew how to sweet talk. However, she had to take care of them. They were still standing at the side, and she was already acting as if no one else was around. If they left, wouldn't that be? Chapter 31-36. They looked ahead and saw Fengjiu leaping into the air. Not long after, a giant flying beast swooped down from the sky and grabbed at her with its claws. Seeing this, their hearts couldn't help but tighten. Fengjiu glanced at the flying beast that swooped down. Seeing the sharp claws grabbing at her, her figure flashed and dodged the attack. She flipped over and leaped onto the back of the flying beast. Just as the flying beast was about to counterattack, a powerful ancient pressure fiercely filled the air and shook the flying beast. The flying beast let out a sharp cry, and in the next moment, its aura was retracted, and its flying speed was clearly slower. "Go to the cliff in front." Fengjiu's voice contained a spiritual aura as she stood on the back of the flying beast and flew towards the cliff. Seeing this scene, Pei Zixuan and the other two couldn't help but sigh with emotion. This was strength that was strong enough to make any living being feel fear and obey obediently. At the cliff, halfway up the mountain, where clouds and mist pervaded, there was a 1,000-year-old black spirit tendon growing on the mountain wall. Fengjiu stopped halfway up the mountain and stood on the back of the flying beast. She saw that the black spirit tendon growing on the mountain wall had each tendon as thick as a finger. The entire spiritual medicine didn't have a single leaf, only the thick roots that were as thick as a finger. It grew close to the mountain wall and was blood-red with a sparkling luster. Seeing this, she couldn't help but reveal a smile. It's really a 1,000-year-old black spirit tendon, and the quality is excellent. It's a rare treasure. She praised from the bottom of her heart. Every single stalk was tightly attached to the mountain wall, and the surrounding area was covered by weeds. Beside the weeds, which was also the side of the black spirit tendons, was a deep and serene little cave. Within that little cave, at this moment, a jet-black poisonous snake was lying on its stomach. The poisonous snake stretched out its head and spat out its blood-red tongue, making a hissing sound. It was staring at Fengjiu and the flying beast outside with caution. Level 3 Divine Beast Black Gold Snake. Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and stared at the snake. You retreated on your own. Or do you want me to do it? That rank 3 black gold snake stuck out its tongue and stared at Fengjiu. Even though this human looked very weak, the aura on his body made it very afraid. That aura seemed to be the aura of an ancient mythological beast. However, when it thought of the spiritual medicine that it had guarded for so many years, it was unwilling to return it. Instead, it stared at the human standing on the flying beast with its cold and bloodthirsty snake eyes. This spiritual medicine is mine. It spoke in human language, flicked its tongue, and looked at Fengjiu threateningly. Hearing this, Fengjiu chuckled. You're the one protecting it, but it's not yours because you can't protect it today. She calmly looked at the black gold snake and said, I'm only sparing your life because you've been protecting it for so many years and you're a divine beast. Why? Do you still want to gamble your life for this stalk of spirit herb? Hearing Fengjiu's words, the black gold snake retreated into the cave and made a concession. Seeing this, Fengjiu smiled and patted the flying beast's head, letting it go closer to the mountain wall. Then she took out her digging tools and carefully prepared to dig out the 1,000-year-old black spirit tendon and move it into her space to plant it. In this way, if she needed to use medicine for meridians in the future, she could use the black spirit tendon.